Some structures defy time. Built by hands long turned to dust, yet still standing against the wind. They weren't just monuments, they were messages, etched in stone, whispered through centuries. From lost fortresses to spiral tombs, we journey into the world's oldest secrets and ask the question no one can answer. How did they build the impossible? The basalt thrones of Socotra. They call it the Island of Dragons, a place so strange that even time seems to move differently here. Socotra, an island adrift in the Arabian Sea, between Yemen and the Horn of Africa, shaped by ancient winds and surrounded by turquoise waters that hide countless stories beneath their calm. To most, it's a forgotten corner of the world, but to those who have walked its basalt ridges, it is something far more mysterious, a relic from an age when gods and kings might have shared the same throne. High above the rugged cliffs, carved from dark volcanic stone, lie the remains of something that defies explanation: massive seats, carved into the basalt itself, arranged like thrones facing the endless sea. Weathered by centuries of salt and sand, they stand silent under the burning sun. No inscriptions, no carvings, no trace of who made them, or why. Just an eerie presence, as if whoever sat there once watched over the island like sentinels of stone. For centuries, the people of Socotra have spoken of ancient rulers, beings who came from the sea, bringing knowledge and power. Some called them the throne keepers, spirits who governed the winds and protected the island's secrets. Others said they were not human at all. Old legends whisper that when the stars aligned, the thrones would glow beneath the moonlight, a signal to something beyond this world. But myths aside, the question remains: who carved these thrones, and how old are they really? Archaeologists who've studied Socotra found tools and pottery dating back thousands of years, proof that this island was a crossroads of ancient civilizations. Traders from Egypt, Greece, and even India once stopped here for the island's treasures: frankincense, myrrh, dragon's blood resin. Yet none of those travelers mentioned any basalt thrones. No record in any language describes them. It's as if they were deliberately hidden or belonged to a time before written memory began. To understand them, you have to understand the island itself. Socotra isn't like anywhere else on Earth. The landscape feels alien. Twisted dragon's blood trees stretch like hands toward the sky, their red sap dripping like blood. The mountains are sharp and black, carved from the bones of volcanoes. The air smells of salt and ancient stone. In places the wind whistles through hollow rocks, sounding almost like voices. It's the kind of place where the line between myth and reality blurs easily. When explorers rediscovered the island in the modern era, they couldn't believe what they saw. Botanists found plants that grew nowhere else, species so old they traced their lineage back millions of years. It was like stepping into a prehistoric world. But among the twisted trees and caves filled with ancient carvings, the basalt thrones stood apart. No one could agree on their origin. Some said they were ceremonial seats for tribal kings. Others argued they were altars, aligned with the stars, yet their placement, high above the cliffs, looking out toward the sea, suggested something grander, something sacred. Satellite imaging showed that some of the thrones aligned perfectly with the sunrise on the summer solstice, while others point toward constellations known to early Sumerians and Egyptians. Coincidence? Maybe. But the precision of those alignments made many believe this was more than just primitive stonework. It was architecture with purpose, perhaps a calendar, a shrine, or a message meant for the heavens. Local elders tell another story, one passed down through generations. They say the thrones were built for the children of the wind, ancient rulers who arrived from the ocean long before the time of men. These beings taught their ancestors how to harness the island's resources, how to use the dragon's blood resin for medicine and magic. And then, one day, they vanished. Only the thrones remained. Some locals still leave offerings there, small shells, incense, drops of resin, to honor the watchers of the sea. In recent years, a few researchers dared to suggest that Socotra could have been part of a forgotten maritime network, a link between Mesopotamia, Egypt, and the Indus Valley. If that's true, the thrones might have marked a sacred port, a resting place for sea kings who ruled before recorded history. But as soon as the theory appeared, it was dismissed by mainstream archaeology. Too speculative, they said, too mythical. Yet the stones remain, unbothered by time or belief. At night, when the moonlight hits the basalt cliffs, the thrones cast long shadows across the ground. The wind moves through them, creating low, haunting tones that sound almost like chanting. Travelers who've camped nearby speak of strange dreams, visions of glowing ships, of voices calling from the sea. Scientists laugh it off as tricks of the mind. But in a place like Socotra, you start to wonder if the island itself is alive, breathing stories into those who dare to listen. The truth is, no one really knows who built them. Carbon dating offers nothing, the stone itself reveals no secrets, and maybe that's what makes the basalt thrones of Socotra so powerful. They remind us that not everything ancient can be measured or explained. Some histories live not in books, but in the silence between the waves. in the shadows of stone. Perhaps these thrones were built for kings, perhaps for gods, or maybe they were never meant for anyone at all, only for the island itself, to sit upon and watch eternity pass by. Whatever their purpose, they remain, dark, patient, and eternal, like the memory of a civilization that once dared to carve its will into the bones of the earth. And as the sun sets over the Arabian Sea, turning the basalt thrones to gold for a fleeting moment, you can't help but feel it, that strange pull, that whisper of something ancient watching back. The island of Socotra keeps its secrets well, but the thrones, they're still waiting for someone to remember. The spiral tombs of Malta. They say Malta was once the heart of the ancient sea, a tiny island that connected worlds, carrying whispers from Egypt, Crete, and beyond. But hidden beneath its sunlit surface lies a world few have seen. A labyrinth carved deep into the limestone, where time itself seems to spiral inward. Some call it the hypogeum, others call it the Tomb of Whispers. But the locals, they just call it the place where the earth breathes. Deep below the streets of modern Malta, a torchlight flickers against spiraling walls of stone. The air here is still, almost heavy, as if the island itself is holding its breath. The tunnels twist and turn, forming perfect spirals that lead nowhere and everywhere at once. Rooms upon rooms carved by hands thousands of years ago, their purpose long forgotten. Some are chambers for the dead, others, maybe not meant for the living at all. Archaeologists believe this vast underground maze was built over 5,000 years ago, long before the pyramids, long before Stonehenge, but no one truly knows who created it. They left behind no writing, no records, not even a name, only the spirals carved into stone again and again, like a language that was never meant to be read, only felt. When the hypogeum was discovered in 1902, by accident, workers digging for a water cistern broke through into the ancient darkness. What they found stunned the world. Entire halls cut from solid rock, burial chambers arranged in impossible precision, and bones upon bones stacked in silence. More than 7,000 bodies once lay here. Yet what caught everyone's attention wasn't the dead, but the design, the spirals. Endless, hypnotic spirals carved on walls, on ceilings, even on the pillars themselves. Some saw them as symbols of eternity, others as portals, gates between worlds, but the deeper you go, the stranger it becomes. In one chamber, the stone curves perfectly to amplify sound. A single whisper can echo for minutes, vibrating through the air like a heartbeat. Scientists later discovered the entire hypogeum was acoustically tuned to resonate at a frequency of 110 Hz, the same frequency known to affect the human brain, causing feelings of awe, fear, and transcendence. Was this an accident? Or did the builders know exactly what they were doing? Imagine standing there, torch in hand, your light trembling across spiraling carvings as the low hum of the stone fills the air. You'd feel it in your chest, not just a sound but something alive, ancient, almost aware. Some who've entered the hypogeum claim to have heard whispers, not voices from others but echoes from themselves, as if the place reaches into the mind, stirring memories that don't belong to this life. The mystery deepens when you consider the island above. Malta is home to some of the world's oldest temples, the Gantija, Hagar Kim, Menajdra, massive megalithic structures built by an unknown people, long before recorded history. These builders seemed obsessed with one thing: stone, sound, and the spiral. Each temple above ground mirrors the patterns found below in the hypogeum. It's as if the entire island was designed as one vast spiritual machine, half in sunlight, half in shadow. Some researchers believe the hypogeum wasn't just a tomb, it was a portal of consciousness. The spirals, the sound, the depth, all part of a ritual to connect the living and the dead. Perhaps the builders believed that death wasn't an end, but a return, a spiral journey inward, back to the source. When the priests stood in the lower chambers and chanted, their voices vibrating through stone, maybe they believed they could open the path between worlds. But there's something else, something unsettling. In the earliest excavation reports, a few strange details were mentioned, and then quickly forgotten. Workers claim to have found unusually elongated skulls among the remains, human, but different, larger cranial capacity, strange proportions. They vanished soon after discovery, reportedly lost during transport. But rumors persisted. Some said the skulls were taken by private collectors, others said they were hidden by the museums themselves. Whatever the truth, the story added another layer to the hypogeum's enigma. Were these skulls simply genetic variations, or were they something else entirely? Local folklore goes even deeper. Villagers used to warn their children never to play near the old caves of Hal Saflieni. They said the earth would sing to those who listened too closely, and those who followed the sound would never return. In the 1940s, a group of schoolchildren allegedly went missing after exploring the lower tunnels. The story claims their voices were heard echoing for hours long after the entrance had been sealed. Officially, it's dismissed as a myth. But even today, guides won't enter the deepest levels of the hypogeum alone. Modern researchers have tried to map every passage, but some areas are still too dangerous to reach. There are reports of tunnels that lead nowhere, walls that seem to hum, even changes in magnetic fields deep underground. The deeper you go, the more disoriented you become, as if the spirals are not just carved on the walls, but built into the very geometry of the place. Some say the hypogeum is alive, that it was built not just as a tomb, but as a living organism of stone. What makes Malta so haunting is that it doesn't fit neatly into any known timeline. Civilizations come and go, yet the builders of the hypogeum remain nameless. Their art, their symbols, their technology, all vanish without trace. No weapons, no writing, no sign of war or conquest. It's as if they simply dissolved into their own creation. Today, when tourists visit, they walk carefully along the guided paths, their footsteps muffled by thousands of years of silence. The guide's voice is soft, almost reverent, echoing through the stone. Most don't realize that the light they carry, small, flickering torches, reveal the same patterns seen in galaxies, hurricanes, even the movement of water draining through rock. The spiral, the most ancient symbol of life itself. Maybe that's what the builders were trying to tell us, that life, death, and time all move in the same endless curve. When you stand in the main chamber and look at the walls glowing red in torchlight, you can almost feel the presence of those who carved them, their tools, their breath, their intention, all still here, suspended in the stone. The deeper you stare into those spirals, the more you feel like you're being drawn in, not just visually, but spiritually. It's as if the hypogeum isn't just a place you visit, it's a place that visits you. Maybe that's why even after thousands of years, the spiral tombs of Malta refuse to be fully understood. They were never meant to be. They were meant to be felt. To remind us that long before modern civilization, someone or something already understood how to shape sound, light, and space into a single unified experience. As the torchlight fades and the hum of the stone quiets, you realize something profound. The people who built this place weren't just burying their dead, they were building a mirror, one that still reflects the mysteries of existence itself. Above ground, Malta shines with sunlight and sea, but below, in the spiraling tombs carved from eternal rock, the island keeps its oldest secret, the sound of the earth dreaming, and the echo of a civilization that spiraled into the unknown. And when you leave, climbing back toward daylight, you can't help but look over your shoulder, because somewhere, deep in the dark, the stone is still whispering, waiting for someone to listen again. The obsidian causeway of Easter Island. They say the ocean remembers. Every wave that crashes carries fragments of stories too old to name. And on a lonely island in the heart of the Pacific, the sea guards one of its darkest secrets, a path of black glass, born of fire, swallowed by waves, and forgotten by time. This is Easter Island, and hidden beneath its storms lies what locals whisper about as the Obsidian Causeway, a road that should not exist, and yet somehow it does. Easter Island, or Rapa Nui as its people call it, is a world of silence and stone. Giant moai statues stare endlessly toward the horizon, their faces eroded by centuries of salt and wind. Tourists come for the mystery of those statues, how they were moved, why they were built, but few know about what lies beyond them, beyond the cliffs where the sea roars against volcanic rock, because there, half buried by coral and tide, lies a structure so strange it's often mistaken for nature itself, a pathway made of obsidian slabs, each one polished smooth as glass, stretching out from the island into the ocean. Divers who've gone near it speak of a feeling unlike anything else, a quiet hum beneath the water, a vibration that seems to pulse from the stones themselves. The path runs straight for over 100 meters before disappearing into the deep, swallowed by darkness. To the untrained eye, it could be a lava flow, frozen midstream. But when researchers studied the pattern, it was too deliberate. The edges were cut at right angles. The slabs were arranged in perfect alignment. Nature does not carve symmetry like that. Someone or something built it. Local legend tells of a time before the statues, when the island was still connected to a greater land, a place they called Hiva. It was said that their ancestors came from there, across the causeway of black stone, under the guidance of the sea gods. But one day the ocean rose, and Hiva sank beneath the waves, leaving only the path and the island behind. The Rapa Nui people still sing songs about that lost homeland, and when storms roll across the island, the waves crash against the obsidian with a sound like drums, the heartbeat of a world that's gone. Archaeologists have tried to explain it away. Some say it's a natural lava bench, shaped by centuries of erosion. Others claim it's a collapsed cave system, filled with volcanic glass. But a few who've seen it up close refuse to believe it's natural. The stones are fused in ways no simple flow could achieve, as if molded by extreme heat and then deliberately arranged. And the alignment, always pointing directly toward the setting sun on the equinox, seems too precise to be coincidence. What if the Obsidian Causeway wasn't a road at all, but a ritual platform? A place where the islanders once stood to speak to the gods of the sea. That might explain the carvings found nearby, spirals, eyes, and wave patterns etched into basalt cliffs overlooking the site. Symbols that appear again and again in Polynesian culture, and even in distant lands across the Pacific. One carving in particular has haunted researchers for years. It shows a figure with elongated arms, holding a circle of black stone over the water. Beneath it, lines radiate outward, like ripples or energy waves. No one knows what it means, but the image matches local tales of the Path of Fire, a road that glowed under moonlight, leading travelers between worlds. Some even claim that when lightning strikes near the shore, the obsidian flashes with light, as if remembering its birth in volcanic flame. Imagine it. Thousands of years ago, under a sky filled with stars, the people of Rapa Nui walking down that shining black causeway, carrying offerings for their gods. The ocean around them calm, the obsidian reflecting the heavens above. It must have looked like walking on the night sky itself. And then, perhaps one day, something changed. The earth trembled, the sea rose, and the path was claimed by the waves. The ocean took back what fire had given. What makes this mystery even deeper is that Easter Island is one of the most isolated places on Earth, more than 2,000 kilometers from the nearest inhabited land. How did its ancient builders learn to shape and move such immense stones? How did they know about obsidian, a material that forms under extreme volcanic pressure, and how to carve it so precisely without metal tools? Every question leads to another, and the silence of the island gives no answers. In recent years, underwater scans have revealed that the causeway may not end at the shoreline. It continues downward, descending like steps into the abyss. Divers describe smooth terraces, as if the structure was once part of a much larger complex now buried beneath coral and sand. One section even appears to curve, like a spiral ramp, a feature unknown in any other Polynesian site. Could this have been a harbor, a temple, or the last remains of the lost homeland of Hiva itself? Some theorists have gone further. They say the causeway aligns with other megalithic sites across the Pacific, from Nan Madol in Micronesia to the submerged ruins off Yonaguni in Japan. Lines drawn between them form strange geometric patterns across the ocean, as if marking an ancient network of forgotten civilizations. To most archaeologists, this sounds impossible. But then again, so did Easter Island statues, until we found them. There's another mystery too. The island's oral history tells of the Long Years, an ancient ruling class said to possess knowledge beyond understanding. They were builders, astronomers, and priests who could command fire and stone. Some believe it was they who created the Obsidian Causeway, a road not for the living, but for the spirits of their ancestors, leading into the realm of the gods beneath the sea. When the Long Years fell in battle, their secrets were lost, but the path remained, half in this world, half in the next. Today, when storms hit the island, waves explode against the cliffs, spraying black water into the air. For a moment, the obsidian glistens beneath the foam, dark, glassy, beautiful, almost alive. Locals say that on certain nights, when the moonlight is bright and the wind is still, you can see something shimmer beneath the waves, a faint glow, as if the causeway remembers the fires that forged it. It's easy to dismiss it all as myth, the ocean playing tricks, the human mind seeing patterns where there are none. But something about the Obsidian Causeway refuses to fade into legend. It sits there at the edge of the world, between land and sea, between what we know and what we feel. A scar of black stone carved into the bones of the earth, humming softly beneath the roar of the waves. Maybe it was never meant to be found. Maybe it was meant to be a reminder that even in the most remote corners of the world, traces of something far older still remain. The sea keeps its secrets, and the island keeps its silence. But when you stand on the cliffs of Rapa Nui and watch the storm roll in, you can almost hear it, the faint echo of footsteps on glass, leading into the unknown. Because some roads don't lead anywhere at all, some roads lead back to where the world began. The steppe wells of Gujarat. In the dry heart of western India, where the sun burns gold over endless plains, the earth hides something extraordinary. Beneath the dust and the hum of modern life lies a network of stone labyrinths, vast, geometric wells that plunge deep into the ground. They are called valves, steppe wells. And though they were built to collect water, they seem to hold something far deeper, a memory of devotion, of mathematics, and of mysteries carved in silence. From above, they look like temples turned inside out, layers of intricate stairways descending into darkness. Each level cut with precision, every pillar adorned with gods, serpents, dancers and flowers frozen in stone. At their center lies stillness, a small pool of green water reflecting the sky. For centuries, travelers, pilgrims, and kings descended these steps, seeking relief from the burning heat. But steppe wells were never just wells. They were worlds of their own, architectural riddles where geometry met spirituality. The story begins more than 1,000 years ago, when the land of Gujarat was a kingdom of both desert and trade. Water was life, and life depended on the monsoon, a rhythm the people knew well. To survive, they learned to dig not just wells, but monuments to the earth's generosity. What they built would become some of the most stunning underground structures the world has ever seen. The most famous of them all stands near Patan, the Rani Ki Vav, the Queen's Step Well. They say it was built in the 11th century by Queen Udayamati in memory of her husband, King Bhimdev. But when you see it, you realize no single person could have dreamed something like this alone. It's 7 stories deep, descending nearly 30 meters below the surface, lined with more than 800 carved sculptures. As sunlight pours down, the steps seem to glow, golden above, shadowed below, like a stairway between heaven and earth. Each wall tells a story. Rows of apsaras, celestial dancers, smile from the stone. Deities emerge from the corners, Vishnu reclining on the serpent, Ananta, Parvati and Shiva locked in quiet grace, the sun god riding his chariot. But beyond the beauty, the well hides an astonishing truth. It is built with perfect mathematical symmetry. Every corridor, every column aligns with an invisible pattern, a rhythm that guides the eye inward, downward, toward stillness. The entire well is a mandala in 3 dimensions, a sacred geometry designed to mirror the cosmos. And this is what makes Gujarat's stepwells so mysterious. They were not simply feats of engineering, they were cosmic machines. A traveler descending the steps wasn't just fetching water, they were symbolically moving through the layers of existence, from light into darkness, from the noise of the world into the quiet of the soul. Each turn, each angle of the staircase represented a step closer to the divine. Even more curious are the acoustics. When you stand at the bottom and speak, your voice doesn't echo, it dissolves. The sound is absorbed by the stone, as if the earth itself is listening. The architects knew exactly how to shape the space, blending art and science in ways we still struggle to explain. Some believe the wells were designed to resonate with water's natural frequency, creating harmony between architecture and element. But the question is, how did they know? How did builders 1,000 years ago carve such precision into hard sandstone without any advanced tools or modern geometry? How did they plan entire subterranean temples perfectly aligned with solar paths and seasons? Scholars say it's the result of experience, intuition, and devotion. But sometimes, when you stand among those stairways and feel the stillness around you, it feels like something greater, knowledge inherited, not learned. There are hundreds of stepwells scattered across Gujarat, each with its own story. Some are simple, narrow shafts, others vast and majestic, lined with corridors and shrines. The Adalaj Vav, near Ahmedabad, is one of the most haunting. Built in the 15th century, it carries the story of another queen, Rudabai, who commissioned the well for her people. Legend says that when her husband, a local ruler, was killed in battle, she was forced to marry his enemy. She agreed, but only after he finished the well her husband had begun. When it was complete, Rudabai walked to its final step, offered a prayer, and leapt into the water. They say her spirit still lingers there, moving among the pillars when the moonlight touches the surface. Adalaj's carvings are filled with symbols, flowers blooming from stone, fish circling in endless patterns, serpents coiling through the columns. To many they are mere decorations, but to the old mystics they were metaphors, reminders of life's cycle, the flow of energy between the heavens and the underworld. The stepwell was not just a place of utility, it was a map of the soul. During monsoons, when the rains filled the wells, villagers would gather at dawn, singing songs of gratitude to the gods. The wells became places of gathering, of trade, of festivals and prayer. They were theaters, sanctuaries, and lifelines all at once. And when the dry season came, they stood as quiet cathedrals of shade, their depths cool and damp, carrying the faint scent of rain long gone. As centuries passed, many of the wells were lost, earthquakes buried some, others filled with sand or collapsed under neglect. Yet even ruins hold their power. When archaeologists rediscovered Rani Ki Vav in the 1940s, it was almost entirely buried, its carvings hidden for nearly 700 years. When they cleared the debris, the well emerged as if reborn, untouched by time. The sculptures were still perfect, the geometry still flawless, as if waiting for the world to remember. In 2014, UNESCO declared it a World Heritage Site, calling it an unparalleled example of subterranean architecture. But even that title feels too small, because when you stand there, under the open sky, looking down into that abyss of beauty and silence, you realize this was never just a monument, it was a dialogue between humanity and the earth itself. Every step downward feels like entering another state of being. The light dims, the air cools, the noise fades. You start to feel the rhythm, the repeating geometry pulling you inward, as if the space itself is breathing. And when you reach the bottom and look up, you see the world framed perfectly by stone and sunlight. The sky becomes a circle, the final point in the spiral. It's breathtaking, almost humbling, like standing inside a prayer carved into the earth. Even today, the villagers nearby believe the stepwells are alive. They say the water listens, that if you speak your wish to the depths, the stone will remember. During festivals, they light lamps along the steps, and the entire structure glows like an inverted temple of fire and water. The reflections shimmer endlessly, stars above, stars below, until you can't tell where the heavens end and the earth begins. Maybe that's what the builders of Gujarat wanted us to understand. That divinity doesn't always stand above us. Sometimes it waits below, in the quiet, in the cool, in the places where light fades into shadow. The stepwells were never about reaching upward. They were about looking inward. As the sun sets across the plains, the wells return to silence. The air fills with the faint cry of birds and the smell of dust after heat. And beneath it all, the waters of the Vav remain. Still, patient, eternal. The same waters that have mirrored countless faces, countless prayers, countless centuries of devotion. The stepwells of Gujarat remind us that even in the driest lands, beauty and meaning can run deep. That the human spirit, like water, always finds a way downward, toward depth, toward stillness, toward truth. And somewhere in that quiet descent, between stone and sky, the earth whispers back, the dolmens of Caucasus. Hidden deep within the mist-soaked mountains of the Caucasus, where the forests breathe ancient air and moss drapes over forgotten stones, there lies a mystery older than empires. Scattered across the landscape, hundreds, perhaps thousands of massive stone chambers rest in silence. Each one built from slabs so perfectly balanced, so precisely placed, that even after thousands of years they stand as if time itself dares not move them. These are the dolmens of the Caucasus. Tombs, altars, portals, no one truly knows. Locals call them Kamenyudoma, the stone houses. But as you step closer, you feel something different. A presence, the kind that whispers stories not written in any book. Each dolmen, some as heavy as 10 tons, carved and positioned with impossible precision, looks out toward the rising sun, as if awaiting something that never returned. Archaeologists have dated these structures to nearly 5,000 years ago, older than the pyramids, older than Stonehenge. And yet the people who built them left no trace of themselves. No cities, no tools, only the stones, and the questions they carry. Who placed them here? Why do so many of them face the same direction? And what is the meaning of the small, perfectly round holes carved into their fronts, like the eye of a giant needle, peering into eternity? Some say the dolmens were tombs for forgotten chieftains. Others believe they were part of an ancient network, a spiritual map across the mountains, linking worlds seen and unseen. But then there are the legends, stories that refuse to die. Villagers tell of nights when pale lights move among the dolmens, of low hums that seem to rise from the stones themselves. They say the openings were once doorways, not for the living, but for the souls that traveled beyond. When the first Russian explorers reached these forests in the 19th century, they were stunned. They believed they'd discovered the remains of a lost civilization. The dolmens were scattered over a massive area, from the Black Sea coast to deep valleys few had ever entered. Some stood alone on ridges, others hid under centuries of moss, their tops barely visible under the earth. Even now, most of them remain unstudied, their purpose unknown. If you listen closely, the stones seem to breathe. Tiny grains of mica shimmer in the cracks, catching the light like stars trapped in rock. In the rain, the surfaces darken, and you can see the tool marks, smooth, deliberate, impossibly uniform. Whoever built them wasn't guessing. They understood geometry, balance, weight, and something beyond engineering, the spirit of stone itself. There's one dolmen, hidden deep near the Sinako River, known as the Gate of the Ancestors. The locals say if you place your ear against its wall at night, you can hear the mountain speak, a deep, slow resonance that feels alive. Modern scientists tested this story, and what they found was strange. The dolmen's inner chamber amplifies low frequencies, almost like a tuning box. Was it designed to channel sound? Or was it a coincidence? No two dolmens are exactly the same, yet they follow a rhythm, a pattern that repeats like notes in a forgotten melody. Each one faces the east, toward the dawn. Each has a portal-like opening, just large enough for a hand to reach through. And beneath many, archaeologists found small traces of burnt bone, ash, and red ochre, the same pigments used in Neolithic burial rituals across Europe. Could this mean the builders were part of a wider ancient culture, one that stretched from the Atlantic to the Black Sea? Some researchers have gone further. They noticed that the dolmens align along invisible paths, lines that match old magnetic anomalies and sometimes even modern energy readings. It's as if the builders were mapping something, not the land, but the unseen veins of the earth itself. Yet what truly sets the Caucasus dolmens apart is their craftsmanship. These weren't piled stones. They were carved, shaped, and fitted like a puzzle. each piece polished flat, edges smooth to a perfect seal. Even today, no mortar holds them together. And after thousands of years of rain, frost, and earthquakes, they still stand. As night falls over the Caucasus, mist rolls between the trees, and the forest begins to hum with quiet life. The dolmens fade into silhouettes, half swallowed by shadow. But in that silence, something lingers, a feeling that these stones are watching, remembering. Maybe they were tombs, maybe they were temples, or maybe, as some local elders whisper, they were never built for humans at all, but by something else, an ancient force, a forgotten intelligence, a memory carved in stone. The dolmens do not answer, they never have. They simply endure, silent, eternal, staring east toward the sunrise that has come and gone for 5,000 years. And in their stillness lies a truth we keep forgetting, that not every mystery of our past was meant to be solved. Some were meant to be felt, standing in the cold forest air, under the weight of history's breath, surrounded by the echoes of a civilization that built in stone and then vanished into the moss. The fortress of Karga Oasis. In the heart of Egypt's western desert, beyond the reach of the Nile's green lifeline, where wind and silence rule the land, lies a valley few have ever seen. A place where the dunes rise like golden waves, and the air hums with heat and memory. And within that valley stands a relic, half buried, half defiant, a fortress that time forgot. They call it the Fortress of Karga Oasis. It is said that if you stand there at sunset, when the last light turns the sand to fire, the walls seem to glow, as if they still remember the men who built them, the soldiers who watched from its towers, the kings who gave it purpose. But what that purpose truly was, remains one of the great riddles of Egypt's desert frontier. Long before Cairo rose, before the pharaohs built their pyramids, there were people who lived between the dunes. The Karga Oasis was their salvation, a rare pocket of life, where underground springs fed palm groves and wheat fields. Traders passed through here, moving between the Nile and the deep desert. And where trade goes, so does power. To protect that power, someone, we still don't know who, built a fortress of stone. Its walls rise from the sand like a mirage, squared, massive, and almost Roman in their precision. Some say it was built by the Persians, others by the Romans themselves, but the deeper you look, the stranger it gets. Parts of the foundation are far older than any empire known to history. The bricks at the base are fused, as if melted by an ancient fire. The corners align with the stars of Orion, and the corridors inside form a perfect spiral toward a central chamber, a spiral in the middle of the desert. The desert hides its secrets well. The fortress was rediscovered only in the early 20th century, when British explorers stumbled upon it while following Bedouin guides. They expected to find a ruin. What they found was something else entirely. Tunnels, cisterns, and rooms carved deep into the rock, still echoing with strange acoustics. One explorer wrote, "It feels as if the fortress was not built to keep men out, but to keep something in." When archaeologists began to excavate the site, they found pottery shards from multiple eras, Egyptian, Persian, Roman, even Christian Coptic pieces from 1,000 years later. It was as if every civilization that passed through Egypt had left a fingerprint here, drawn to this spot, as though the desert itself demanded it. But the architecture, the geometry, was wrong for them all. It belonged to no known style, no known hand. The walls of Karga are built from sandstone, cut with impossible precision, locked without mortar. Even after centuries of storms, they stand straight, resisting the desert's will to erase them. At night, when the wind howls through the empty corridors, it makes a deep, low sound, a resonance that feels almost alive. Some say the fortress hums, others say it's the desert itself breathing through its stones. Inside, symbols are etched faintly on the walls, spirals, eyes, and a sun above a horizon. They resemble early Egyptian hieroglyphs, but cruder, older, almost like prototypes of language itself. Were these markings sacred, warnings, or something left by the fortress's earliest builders, long before history began recording Egypt's story? In one chamber, archaeologists found something unsettling. A small altar-like block, blackened by fire, surrounded by circular grooves cut into the floor. No one knows what it was used for. But nearby, they found fragments of obsidian, a volcanic glass that does not exist naturally in this part of the desert. It had to have been brought here, carried across hundreds of miles. Why? Some believe the fortress was a watchtower, guarding the old caravan route that connected Thebes to the desert oasis. Others believe it was a ritual site, a place where the ancients studied the stars and the movement of the seasons. But the strangest theory of all came from an astronomer in the 1970s, who noticed that the fortress's main gate aligns perfectly with the rising of Sirius, the star the ancient Egyptians called Soptet, the herald of the Nile flood. He suggested that the Karga fortress might not have been built for war or trade, but as a temple of time itself. Every year, when Sirius appeared in the dawn sky, The walls would catch its light for a brief moment before the sun rose, illuminating the spiral chamber within. A hidden clock, powered by starlight and silence. Locals still speak of a legend that during the summer solstice, a beam of light passes through the main gate and lands upon a single stone in the central chamber. Some have seen it, some have waited for it, their entire lives. They call it the Eye of Ra, believing that when it opens, the past and present touch, if only for a breath. Today, the fortress lies half buried, its towers eroded, its walls cracked. But when you walk through it, when your hands brush against the sandstone, you can feel the pulse of something ancient. The wind carries whispers through its corridors, voices you can almost hear, telling stories no historian ever wrote down. There's a silence here that feels deliberate, not absence, but memory. The kind that makes you question how many layers of civilization have come and gone beneath our feet, how many times humanity has risen, fallen, and left behind their stone testaments to the sky. In the end, the fortress of Karga stands as a paradox, a ruin without an origin, a monument without a builder, a place where time folds upon itself, and the desert guards its secret with endless patience. Perhaps that's why it still stands, because some stories are not meant to be unearthed, only witnessed, and in the stillness of the Karga sands, under the endless Egyptian sun, the fortress waits, watching the horizon, as it has for thousands of years, for the light of Sirius to rise once more. The ziggurat of Choga-Zandil. In the endless plains of southwestern Iran, where the desert wind carries the taste of salt and dust, a colossal shape rises from the horizon, silent, stepped, and ancient beyond comprehension. Long before Babylon's glory, before Persia's empire or Alexander's march, this tower was already old. It is called Choga-Zandil, the ziggurat of the Elamites, a temple built not for man, but for gods long forgotten. When the first rays of morning light strike its weathered bricks, they seem to shimmer like embers from a dying fire. From a distance it looks like a mountain made by hands, tier upon tier of mud brick, rising into the storm-gray sky. And though it has stood for over 3,000 years, its story reaches further back, to a time when gods still walked among kings, and the heavens were thought to be within reach. They say the ziggurat was built by Untash-Napirisha, king of the Elamite Empire, around 1250 BC. But what drove him to raise such a structure in the middle of nowhere remains unclear. It was not built near a great river, nor a capital, nor a city of trade. It stands alone, surrounded by silence, as if its builders wanted it to be seen by the sky more than by men. The ziggurat rises 5 levels high, though only 3 remain today, each level smaller than the one below, forming a vast staircase of clay and baked brick. Thousands of bricks, each stamped with cuneiform inscriptions, the king's name, his devotion, his plea for the god's favor. But between those lines, archaeologists notice something stranger, symbols that do not match Elamite writing at all. Spirals, twin lines, and a mark that looks like the rising of a sun. Some believe they are remnants of an older script, a language predating history itself. At the summit once stood a shrine to Inshushinak, the great god of Susa, guardian of the underworld and judge of the dead. Priests would climb its steps carrying offerings, oil, incense, and the blood of animals, so the smoke could rise straight into the heavens. From the top they would watch the storms gathering over the plains, flashes of lightning dancing across the horizon. To them, thunder was not weather, it was a voice. But time is a patient destroyer. The Elamite Empire fell, and the desert claimed its temple. For nearly 3,000 years, the ziggurat lay buried beneath dust, half swallowed by salt and wind, until a French archaeologist named Roman Gershman uncovered it in the 1930s. What he found defied expectation: a city of temples, reservoirs, and courtyards surrounding the ziggurat, all planned with mathematical precision. The deeper his team dug, the more they realized this wasn't just a temple, it was a world in itself. Beneath the ziggurat, they found tunnels carved into the bedrock, some leading nowhere, others spiraling deep underground. In one, they found fragments of ceramic jars filled with ashes and small shards of gold leaf, offerings, perhaps, or remains of a ritual we no longer understand. And there was something else. Beneath the lowest level, in the heart of the foundation, they found a massive hollow space, lined with black bitumen and crushed shells. It was perfectly sealed. No one dared open it. The locals warned them, what sleeps beneath should never see the sun. The structure of Choga-Zandil is so precise that its main axes align exactly with the 4 cardinal directions: north, south, east, west. The builders had no compasses, no modern instruments, yet the alignment is nearly perfect. Some say they used the stars, particularly the path of Venus, which the Elamites worshipped as the eye of heaven. Others claim something deeper, that they possessed a knowledge of the Earth's energy, a way of reading its magnetic pulse through stone. Even after centuries of decay, the ziggurat seems alive. During storms, the wind roars through its hollow stairways, producing low, haunting tones that echo across the plain. Travelers speak of strange lights seen dancing over its summit, like blue fire flickering in the rain. Scientists call it static discharge. The locals call it the return of the gods. What makes Choga Zanbil even more mysterious is its sudden abandonment. Archaeological evidence suggests it was never finished. The outer walls were left incomplete, tools left behind, bricks half-fired. No battle, no fire, no invasion, just silence. The people vanished, and the temple was left to the sand. Some historians believe the king who built it died before it could be completed. Others whisper darker tales, that a ritual went wrong, that something within the temple demanded silence. The Elamites never returned. And over the centuries, even their name faded into the background noise of history. Yet here, in the storm-scarred plains, their ziggurat endures, more a mountain than a monument. From above, it looks like a great spiral of stone, a stairway not to the heavens but to memory itself. Stand before it, and you can almost feel the weight of those ancient prayers, the scent of incense, the heat of torches climbing the steps at dusk, the sound of chants in a language no one alive can speak. And in that moment, you realize something simple and profound. Humanity has always looked upward, whether through temples, towers, or dreams. We've always tried to bridge the distance between earth and sky. The ziggurat of Choga Zanbil is more than a ruin. It is a reminder that long before the modern world, long before science or empire, our ancestors reached for the divine with nothing but clay, fire, and faith. The rain falls, washing the dust from its ancient bricks. Lightning flashes across the horizon, striking somewhere beyond sight, and the ziggurat stands, silent, enduring, staring into the storm, as if waiting for the gods to return. The Nuraghi Towers of Sardinia. Off the western coast of Italy, surrounded by the endless blue of the Mediterranean, lies an island that has kept its secrets well. Sardinia, rugged, ancient, and wild. Its hills are scattered with stones older than history itself, and rising from those stones, across valleys and cliffs and meadows, stand thousands of towers, round, massive, and silent. They are called Nuraghe, and they are the heart of one of Europe's greatest unsolved mysteries. No one knows who built them, no one knows why. But there are more than 7,000 of them spread across the island, colossal beehive-shaped fortresses of stone, each one different, each one whispering of a civilization that rose and vanished long before Rome ever dreamed of empire. When you see one for the first time, it doesn't feel like you're looking at a ruin. It feels alive. The walls curve inward with purpose, each basalt block weighing tons, stacked without mortar, locked in perfect harmony. They have stood for nearly 4,000 years, surviving earthquakes, invasions, and time itself. At their peak, these towers must have gleamed in the sunlight like beacons. Some still do. The Nuragic people, as archaeologists later called them, appeared suddenly around 1800 BC. No written language, no known origin, only their towers, and the artifacts buried within them. Bronze daggers, figurines of horned gods, and delicate jewelry made from gold and amber. Whoever they were builders, dreamers, a people who shaped mountains into homes and fortresses into symbols. But perhaps the strangest thing is this: no two towers are exactly the same, yet all follow a similar logic. A circular core, sometimes surrounded by smaller towers, connected by courtyards, wells, and hidden passageways. From above, they look like stars connected by invisible lines, dotting the landscape in patterns that some believe mirror the constellations. There is one tower that stands above them all, Nuraghe su Nuraxi, near the village of Barumini, a massive complex of interlocking towers, walls, and chambers, rising like a stone labyrinth from the earth. When archaeologists excavated it in the 1950s, they were astonished. Inside, they found staircases spiraling upward, chambers that echoed like the inside of a shell, and walls thicker than any fortress of the ancient world. The air inside still smells faintly of earth and ash, as if the fires of its builders have only just gone out. What was it for? A fortress? A temple? A place of gathering? The truth may be all of these. Evidence suggests that the towers were centers of Nuraghe life, homes for clans, watchtowers for defense, sanctuaries for the gods. But deep within some, archaeologists have found something else: wells. Perfectly carved, circular shafts that reach down into the earth, wells so smooth, they reflect torchlight like mirrors. At the bottom, offerings, bronze figurines, shells, and in one, the skull of a child. The Nuraghe people worshipped the elements, sun, stone, and water. They saw divinity in balance, in geometry, in the eternal rhythm of the earth. Their towers, perhaps, were more than shelters. They were instruments. The round chambers resonate with sound in strange ways. A single note, sung within, can echo for seconds, bending and blending into itself. Some believe these chambers were used for ritual chants, ceremonies where sound connected the living and the divine. The towers were alive with people once, families, warriors, children, priests, a whole world built within walls of stone. And then, slowly, it all ended. The reasons remain unknown. Maybe climate changed, maybe wars came, maybe the gods they built for fell silent. By the time the Phoenicians reached Sardinia around 1000 BC, the Nuragic civilization was fading, its towers already ancient. The newcomers built beside them, traded with their descendants, and told stories of giants who once walked the island. Those legends still survive. The locals call the Nuragi, Domus de Janus, the houses of fairies. They say that when the wind passes through the towers at night, you can hear the whispers of the old ones, the sound of the giants who built the stones. Some claim that during full moons, strange blue lights flicker within the ruins, hovering just above the stones before vanishing into the dark. Science offers explanations: phosphorescent gases, reflections, tricks of the eye. But when you stand there, under the vast Sardinian sky, surrounded by thousands of towers stretching to the horizon, explanations feel small. Archaeologists have mapped their locations, and the results are startling. Many nurago line along ridgelines that match the sunrise during the solstices. Others mirror the path of stars like Orion and the Pleiades. Were these towers calendars, observatories, messages written in stone to the heavens above? No one can say for certain. The builders left no words behind, only form, balance, and endurance. Perhaps that is the language of the Nuraga people. Architecture as memory. When the storms roll across Sardinia, lightning sometimes strikes the towers, splitting the sky into white fire. For a moment, they glow, just as they did thousands of years ago. And in that flash, you can almost see them, the builders, their faces lit by torchlight, lifting stones that weighed more than themselves, fitting them together by instinct, by song, by something we no longer understand. Today, the towers still stand, thousands of them, their shadows stretching long at dusk. The grass grows over their bases, the sea wind smooths their edges, but they endure, watching, waiting, and perhaps that's what the Nuragic people intended, to build not for their own time, but for eternity. To carve their place into the world so deeply that even when their names vanished, their stones would still speak. If you listen, they still do. Across the hills of Sardinia, where the air smells of thyme and sea salt, and the earth holds the memory of giants, the Nuragic towers whisper of a civilization that looked to the stars and saw itself reflected there, strong, silent, and endless. The towers do not crumble, they do not fade, they remain, guardians of a forgotten world, standing between myth and memory. And in their shadow, time stands still. The Observatory of Palenque, deep within the jungles of Chiapas, Mexico, where the morning mist clings to the ancient trees and the cries of howler monkeys echo like drums through the valley. There stands a ruin that seems to breathe, stone steps swallowed by vines, carvings half buried in moss, and a tower rising above it all. Slender, mysterious, and impossibly precise. The locals call it El Templo del Sol, the Temple of the Sun, but for generations of explorers and astronomers, it has another name: the Observatory of Palenque. Here, among the ruins of a once great Maya city, time itself feels suspended, the air hums with history, the stones are warm beneath the morning light, and the jungle whispers secrets through every leaf. It was here, more than 1,000 years ago, that the Maya built a place not just of worship, but of calculation. A machine of time, carved from stone. Palenque was once called La Camha, the Big Water. It thrived between the 6th and 9th centuries CE, a city of kings, astronomers, and poets. Its temples were not only shrines but observatories, instruments designed to follow the stars. The Maya believed the sky was alive, that each movement of the planets, each eclipse and solstice, carried meaning, shaping the fate of kings and kingdoms alike. And at the center of this cosmic city rose the observatory tower, built atop the palace of Palenque. From afar, it looks simple, a square base, narrow windows, a stair spiraling toward the heavens. But the deeper you study it, the stranger it becomes. Every angle, every window, every alignment is deliberate. When the sun rises on the summer solstice, light passes through one narrow slit in the tower and illuminates a chamber deep below, where carved symbols of the maize god glimmer in gold. When the sun sets on the winter solstice, another window catches its final ray, falling upon the carved face of King Pakal, the ruler who dreamed this city into stone. But the observatory wasn't just about the sun. It was tuned to the moon, to Venus, and to the great cycles that governed Maya time, the long count, the sacred Tzolk'in, and the solar hobby calendar. To the Maya, time wasn't linear, it was circular, a living pattern that repeated endlessly, and the observatory of Palenque was their clock, keeping rhythm with the universe itself. When Spanish explorers first saw Palenque in the 18th century, they thought it was the work of Greeks, Egyptians, or perhaps even lost Atlanteans. They could not believe the Maya, a civilization they considered primitive, had built something so precise, so aligned with the heavens, but they had, and they did it with tools of stone and observation, guided only by patience in the sky. The Maya tracked Venus with an accuracy rivaling modern astronomers. They knew the planet disappeared and reappeared in cycles of 584 days. They used these observations to plan wars, coronations, and rituals, for Venus, to them, was not a planet. It was a god of duality, both light and war. And from the Tower of Palenque, its movements could be seen perfectly through the eastern window. At dawn, the mist rises like smoke from the jungle, and the ruins of Palenque emerge, a city of ghosts. The tower of the observatory catches the first light, and for a moment, it feels as if the city awakens. The parrots cry, the air shimmers, and somewhere, the echoes of drums begin to beat again. Slow, steady, ancient. Inside the observatory, the walls are still smooth, still cool to the touch. The scent of earth fills the air. On some stones, the faint carvings of glyphs remain, stories of kings, gods, and the stars that guided them. One glyph tells of Kinich Pakal, the great ruler of Palenque, who was buried beneath the Temple of the Inscriptions, his tomb sealed by a stone so heavy it took centuries to uncover. Pakal believed he was born from the cosmos. His architects built Palenque to mirror the sky, the temples aligned with the constellations, the courtyards tracing the sun's journey. The observatory was his eye on the heavens, his bridge between the earthly and the divine. Archaeologists have found that the entire city forms a cosmic diagram: the temple of the sun, the cross, and the foliated cross, representing the paths of celestial bodies. The observatory was the heart of this pattern, where priests and astronomers gathered to interpret the messages of the stars. Every night, they would climb the spiral stair, carrying torches that flickered against the stone, their shadows dancing like spirits on the walls. They would watch the sky, marking the rising of Venus, the turning of the moon, the passage of constellations like Orion, the celestial turtle of Maya myth. Their calculations predicted eclipses, solstices, and even the rare conjunctions of planets. To them, these were not random events, but divine dialogues between gods. And when the omens turned dark, when the sun vanished in an eclipse, or Venus appeared at dawn like a dagger of light, the priests would descend into the temples below, offering jade, blood, and fire to restore balance to the world. The observatory of Palenque was not just a tower, it was a temple of order amid the chaos of nature. A statement that the universe had rhythm, that the gods could be understood through patience, and that time itself was sacred. Yet, like all civilizations, Palenque fell. Around the 9th century, the city was abandoned, the jungle crept in, covering everything in silence and green. The observatory, once alive with chance and light, became a nest for birds, its stairs cracked, its windows filled with vines. Centuries passed, but even in ruin, its purpose endured. The sun still finds its mark on solstice mornings. Venus still gleams through its windows at dawn. Time still flows through its stones like water through the jungle. When modern archaeologists rebuilt parts of the tower, they realized something extraordinary. Even after 1,000 years, the original alignments were still perfect, not a single degree off. Whoever built the observatory did not merely watch the sky, they understood it. As night falls, the jungle grows silent again. Fireflies drift through the trees, their glow faint but steady. Above, the same stars that guided the Maya still shine, bright and eternal. And if you stand among the ruins and look up through the openings of the observatory, you can see them framed, exactly as they were meant to be. Perhaps that's what the builders intended. To remind those who came after that even when empires fall, the heavens remain. That the dance of stars, moons, and suns continues, unchanged, unbroken. The observatory of Palenque is a relic, yes, but it's also a promise. That knowledge is not lost, only sleeping. That the cosmos has always been within reach for those who dare to look up and listen. And as the dawn breaks over the jungle once more, golden light washing over stone and vine, the observatory glows again, its ancient eye opening to greet the rising sun. The city may be gone, the priests may be dust, but their clock still runs, carved into the bones of the earth, ticking softly in rhythm with the stars. And in that rhythm their voices still echo, reminding us that long before telescopes and machines, humanity already knew how to speak to the sky. The pyramids of Meroe. Across the golden sands of the Sudanese desert, where the Nile bends and the wind carries whispers of forgotten kingdoms, a field of shadows rises against the dying sun. Dozens of slender pyramids, their peaks sharp as spears, cast long silhouettes across the dunes. Their stones glow crimson beneath the desert light, silent, beautiful, and ancient. This is Meroe, the city of black pharaohs, a kingdom once powerful enough to rival Egypt, and yet, for centuries, almost completely erased from history. Here, in the heart of Nubia, the sands hide more than ruins. They hide a civilization that reigned for 1,000 years, a dynasty that wrote its own chapter in the story of the Nile. The pyramids of Meroe stand not as imitations, but as declarations, proof that greatness was not born in Egypt alone. The first travelers who stumbled upon Meroe thought they had found a lost branch of the Egyptian empire. The pyramids looked familiar, tall, triangular, crowned with small chapels at their base. But there was something different. These pyramids were smaller, steeper, sharper. Their angles cut the sky like knives. Their carvings carried faces that were distinctly African, proud, regal, and fierce. The sands of time may have swallowed their cities, but the kingdom of Kush once ruled this land. A power that rose after Egypt's decline, and for a time conquered the conquerors themselves. Around 750 BCE, the kings of Kush marched north, seized Thebes, and took the throne of Egypt. They ruled as pharaohs of the 25th dynasty, uniting the lands of the Nile from Khartoum to the Mediterranean. They built temples to Amun, worshipped the same gods, and were buried beneath the desert sky, not in the Valley of the Kings, but here, in Meroe. The pyramids of Meroe were the final homes of these rulers, kings, queens, and warrior priests who believed death was a continuation, not an ending. Each pyramid marked a gateway to eternity. Beneath every one lay a burial chamber, carved deep into the earth, where golden masks, weapons, and offerings were placed to guide the soul through the afterlife. When archaeologists first opened these tombs, they found murals that shimmered with strange beauty, paintings of black-skinned pharaohs standing beside gods with falcon heads and lion faces, scenes of battle, of birth, and of judgment. The names inscribed were not Egyptian. They belonged to the Kushite line, Amana-Shaketo, Amanatora, Taharka, Pa, names that once commanded armies and shaped empires. The pyramid of Queen Amana-Shaketo still stands tall among the dunes. She was one of Meroe's most powerful rulers, a queen who reigned not in the shadow of men, but beside them, and often above them. The treasures from her tomb dazzled the world, golden rings, amulets, and a crown so finely made it seemed divine. The symbols etched upon them told stories of victory, of trade routes that stretched to Rome and India, of a kingdom that refused to be forgotten. But time, as always, is cruel. In the 19th century, the Italian explorer Giuseppe Ferlini arrived. Drawn by rumors of gold buried in the sands, he blew apart dozens of pyramids with dynamite, tearing through history in search of treasure. When he left, he carried away the riches of Meroe, but left its stones broken and bleeding beneath the desert sky. Yet even shattered, the pyramids endure. Each scar tells of survival. The carvings that remain still speak of gods and kings, of a civilization that once turned the desert into a kingdom of light. Modern archaeologists, studying these ruins, discovered that Meroe was more than a royal necropolis. It was a city of iron and fire, an industrial hub where furnaces burned day and night. The sands around the pyramids are darkened with slag, the remains of smelted iron. This was the beating heart of the Kushite Empire, a city that forged weapons, tools, and trade goods that flowed down the Nile and across the Red Sea. And above it all, the pyramids stood, sentinels of eternity, watching over the living and the dead. The Kushites had their own writing, the Meroitic script, one of the oldest in Africa. Even today it remains largely undeciphered. The words carved into these stones are a mystery, songs, prayers, histories locked in silence. The desert holds their voices hostage, waiting for someone to understand. At sunset, when the sky turns the color of fire, the pyramids of Meroe glow as if alive. The wind hums through their chambers, and the sand moves like water around their bases. If you close your eyes, you can almost hear the sound of drums, the chants of priests, the whisper of the Nile in the distance. You can imagine the funerary processions that once moved across these dunes, warriors carrying torches, women scattering petals, priests offering incense to the gods. In the ancient texts of Egypt, Nubia was called Taseti, the land of the bow. Its people were famed archers, their kings known as warriors. The pharaohs of Meroe inherited that legacy. Their temples depict them standing tall, drawing great bows against armies and beasts. But they were also builders, scholars, and astronomers. They studied the stars as their Egyptian kin did, aligning their pyramids with celestial events. Even in death, they looked to the heavens. Many pyramids face east, toward the rising sun, the symbol of rebirth. The idea was simple. When the first light of morning touched their tomb, the soul would awaken and rise with it, crossing into the world beyond. Today, the desert around Meroe is almost silent. The nearest village lies miles away. But when night falls and the wind slows, the stars above this place burn brighter than anywhere else on Earth. The Milky Way stretches like a river of light, and beneath it the pyramids stand, black silhouettes against eternity. It's easy to forget that these ruins once belonged to a kingdom that defied empires. When Rome tried to invade Nubia, it was Queen Amanirenas who led her armies north, blinded in one eye but unbroken. Her soldiers struck the Roman fortresses and returned with the bronze head of Emperor Augustus, which she buried beneath the temple steps, so that every time her people entered to pray, they would walk over the face of Rome. That is the spirit of Meroe, fierce, proud, and unyielding. Centuries later, the sands took it all back. The Nile shifted its course. The cities were abandoned, and the memory of the black pharaohs faded from the world's stories. Egypt remained immortalized, but Nubia, its sister, its Meroe, was forgotten. Only in recent decades has Meroe begun to re-emerge, through the work of archaeologists and Sudanese historians reclaiming their heritage. Slowly, the story of this desert empire is being rewritten, one carved stone, one deciphered glyph at a time. Standing among the pyramids today, you can feel that history pressing close. The air is dry, the silence vast, and the horizon endless. The pyramids seem to breathe, to pulse with some buried rhythm, a heartbeat of a civilization that refuses to die. As the sun sinks below the dunes, its last light turns the stones blood red. The shadows stretch, the wind sighs, and the stars begin to pierce the twilight. And in that moment, standing in the kingdom of Meroe, you realize these pyramids are not ruins. They are memories made solid. They are voices of kings and queens who spoke to eternity and were answered. The sands may bury them, time may wound them, but the legacy of Meroe still stands, proud, silent, and eternal beneath the desert sky. Because even when forgotten by the world, the gods of stone never stop watching. The fortress of Anam. High upon the wind-swept plains of eastern Armenia, where the earth falls away into deep canyons and the mountains stand like ancient sentinels, lies a city carved from silence. The snow drifts across its broken towers, and the wind howls through its empty streets. Once this was a city of 1,000 churches, a fortress of stone and faith, the pride of a kingdom. Now, it is only echoes. This is Ani, the ghost fortress of Armenia. Centuries ago, Ani was not just a city, it was a dream in stone, vast, walled and radiant, built atop a plateau overlooking the Akurian River. Travelers who saw it in its prime called it the City of 40 Gates and the Jewel of the East. Its walls stretched for miles, its towers glittered in the sun, and its churches reached toward heaven like frozen prayers. But today, Ani sleeps beneath the snow. Its gates are open to no one. The fortress that once guarded kings and pilgrims is now a ruin of haunting beauty, a reminder that even the mightiest citadels can be conquered by time. The story of Ani begins over 1,000 years ago, in the 10th century, when the Bagratid dynasty rose to power. They dreamed of creating a capital that would rival Constantinople and Baghdad, a city that would proclaim the strength of Armenia to the world. And so on this windswept plain, they built Ani, a fortress, a city, and a symbol. At its height, Ani was home to more than 100,000 people. Its streets were paved, its marketplaces filled with silk, spices, and song. The sound of church bells echoed from every hill, and the banners of the Bagratid kings flew above its walls. The fortress itself was a marvel of medieval engineering. Its double walls rose in jagged tiers, reinforced with towers every few meters. Watchmen could see for miles, across the river into what is now Turkey, across the plains where caravans moved like shadows. The city sat atop natural cliffs, turning the entire plateau into a fortress. No army could approach unnoticed. Inside the walls stood wonders of architecture, cathedrals carved with precision that defies centuries of erosion. The Cathedral of Ani, designed by the great architect Tredat, was an engineering masterpiece. Its tall arches, ribbed vaults, and perfect geometry would later inspire builders of great European cathedrals. Even in ruin, its dome rises against the sky like the skeleton of a fallen star. When snow falls over Ani, the sound dies completely. The only movement is the wind tracing the outlines of lost streets. But in the 11th century, this silence would have been unthinkable. The air was filled with the hammering of builders, the chants of monks, and the hum of markets that stretched from gate to gate. From the towers you could see the fortress walls glimmering red under the sunset. Within those walls, the people of Ani believed themselves invincible. They had beaten back invaders before, Arabs, Byzantines, Persians, each time rebuilding, stronger than before. But empires never last forever. In 1045, the Byzantine Empire came for Ani. The Bagratid kingdom was weakened by internal strife, and the Byzantines saw their chance. The great gates fell, the cross of Armenia was replaced by the imperial banner of Byzantium. But Ani's spirit did not break. Only a few decades later, in 1064, another army appeared on the horizon, the Seljuk Turks, led by Alp Arslan. Their siege lasted 25 days. When the walls fell, Ani was stormed, its churches burned, and its people slaughtered. Chroniclers wrote that blood ran through the streets like a river. The city of 40 gates became a city of silence, and yet somehow it endured. Merchants returned. The walls were rebuilt. The Armenians, resilient as the stones they carved, lived on, through centuries of conquest. Mongols, Persians, Georgians, Ottomans. Ani continued to exist, sometimes thriving, sometimes forgotten. Its fortress remained a place of power. The walls were repaired again and again, their stones darkened by fire and frost. New rulers carved new symbols into old gates. The churches still rang with hymns in winter when the snow glowed blue under moonlight. But time has its own armies, earthquakes, neglect, and silence. In 1319, a massive earthquake struck Ani, toppling towers, shattering domes, and splitting the fortress walls. The survivors fled. The city that had defied empires could not defy nature. By the 17th century, Ani was empty, a ghost city swallowed by snow and wind. Yet, even in ruin, Ani is breathtaking. The Church of the Redeemer, though split cleanly in half by the earthquake, still stands, one half open to the sky, its frescoes fading but visible, saints' faces staring into the void. The Church of St. Gregory still keeps its perfect dome, the snow gathering in quiet circles around its base. The cathedral, though roofless, catches the dawn light through its broken arches, illuminating the stone like stained glass. The fortress walls, once patrolled by soldiers, are now walked by shadows and snow foxes. The wind whistles through the arrow slits, making the city sing in tones both eerie and beautiful. It's as if the stones themselves remember, whispering in the cold air, telling the story of a civilization that refused to vanish quietly. Historians call Ani the city of ghosts, but to the Armenians, it's more than that. It's a symbol of endurance. Through centuries of loss, exile, and erasure, Ani remains a heartbeat in the snow, a reminder of who they were and who they still are. Armenian legends say that on winter nights when the moon is full, the spirits of Ani's people return. They walk the old streets, light invisible candles, and sing hymns in the language of their ancestors. The city glows faintly in the moonlight, not with life, but with memory. Modern archaeologists have begun restoring parts of Ani, carefully tracing its streets and rebuilding its shattered walls. But much of the fortress is still untouched, a frozen moment in time, preserved by cold and solitude. Standing among its ruins, you can feel the pulse of centuries beneath your feet. The stones are smooth, polished by wind. The air smells of ice and dust. The silence is not empty. It's alive, filled with stories. From the edge of the fortress, you can see the deep gorge below, the Akurian River, marking the border between Armenia and Turkey. Once, Ani's bridges spanned that canyon. Now, only their bases remain, half buried in snow, like the bones of giants. As the sun sets, the snow turns pink, then gold, then violet. The ruins glow softly, and for a moment, Ani seems alive again. The fortress stands proud, defiant, eternal. The wind carries the echo of church bells, and the city, for just a breath, remembers what it was. Then the light fades, the cold returns, and Ani sinks once more into its long, beautiful sleep. The fortress that once guarded kings now guards only silence, but in that silence there is peace, the kind that comes when a story finally finds its rest. Because even though its walls are broken and its name nearly lost to time, the fortress of Ani still stands, not just in stone, but in the memory of a people who refuse to forget. The snow will melt, the wind will shift, but the city will remain, carved not just into the earth, but into the heart of history. And as the stars rise over the plains, shining cold and eternal, the fortress of Ani gleams once more, a ghost of glory, a whisper of eternity, a monument to the truth that even in ruin, beauty endures. The Dolmen Fields of Korea. At dawn, when the mist still clings to the rolling hills of South Korea, and the morning light spills soft and silver across the fields, the stones begin to appear, silent, ancient, and solemn, hundreds of them scattered across the landscape like sleeping giants. Each one is heavy, perfectly balanced, and older than history itself. These are the Dolmen Fields of Korea, one of the greatest megalithic mysteries in all of Asia. To wander among them is to walk through time. The air is cool, heavy with dew, and every stone seems to hum faintly, as if echoing some forgotten song. They stand in rows, in clusters, in lonely silence, capstones balanced on upright slabs, forming small stone tables, tombs, or altars. They look simple, but behind that simplicity lies a story as deep and mysterious as the earth itself. These dolmens, or goindol as they are called in Korean, are not isolated relics. There are tens of thousands of them scattered across the Korean peninsula. More than half of all the dolmens in the entire world are found here, in Gocheong, Hwasun, and Gonghwa. They are so ancient that even the oldest legends cannot say who first built them. Some believe they were tombs for chieftains of the Bronze Age, graves for leaders whose power extended over early Korean tribes more than 3,000 years ago. Others believe they were sacred altars, places where shamans called to the heavens, performing rituals under the stars. But no one truly knows, because the builders left no words, no inscriptions, no written record, only stones. Archaeologists studying these dolmens have found traces of burial goods, pottery, bronze daggers, beads of jade, but even these clues are scattered, inconsistent, as if each dolmen tells a slightly different story. In some, bones were found, in others, nothing at all. It's as though the dolmens themselves decided what to keep and what to hide. When you stand before one, you realize their construction was no simple task. Some of these stones weigh over 100 tons, carved from granite or basalt, hauled across valleys, and lifted with impossible precision onto standing supports. This was not random labor. It was organized. It was ritualized. It was an act of will. Who were these people, 3 millennia ago, who could move mountains without metal cranes or wheels? And why here, in these misty hills, by the quiet rivers, where the fog never truly lifts? The Korean dolmen fields belong to a forgotten world, a civilization that existed before the age of kings, before the first dynasties, a world of farmers, shamans, and chieftains who saw life and death as part of the same circle. Each dolmen marks a crossing, a doorway between the living and the spirits. The capstone above represents the heavens, the uprights the pillars between worlds, and the empty space within, the passage of the soul. In the Gocheong dolmen site, the stones stretch for miles across soft green hills. Some are upright, proud, others sunken into the earth, leaning like old men tired from standing for centuries. When the fog rolls in, the field transforms. The stones fade in and out of view, as if drifting through time itself. Villagers once said that these stones walk at night, that they move a little each year, shifting closer to one another. They called them spirit stones, believing that the souls of the ancestors sleep within them. When lightning struck a dolmen, it was not seen as destruction, but as a sign that the heavens had spoken. Modern researchers use drones and lasers to map their positions, discovering that many dolmens align with the stars, especially with Orion and the North Star. Some are oriented towards sunrise on the solstice, others towards sacred mountains on the horizon. Whether by design or instinct, the builders of these dolmens built their world in rhythm with the sky, and yet the mystery deepens. Similar dolmens appear across Eurasia, in Europe, India, and Japan. But Korea's are different, denser, more deliberate. It's as if this small peninsula became the heart of some global tradition of stone and spirit. Scholars still argue how this happened. Did the idea spread through migration, or did humans, separated by continents, simply arrive at the same truth that stone could hold the soul? The dolmen builders left behind no monuments of gold, no grand palaces, only these stones. And yet their endurance surpasses every empire that followed. Empires rose, the Goguryeo, Baekje, and Silla kingdoms, and fell. Confucian temples came, Buddhist pagodas rose, cities grew and vanished, but the dolmens remained, unchanged, unbroken, waiting. In the village of Ganghwa, high on a hill overlooking the sea, stands the largest of them all, a capstone that weighs over 300 tons. Locals call it the King's Table. Legend says it was placed there by giants, or by gods. From its summit you can see the coastline stretching to the horizon, a place where land, sea, and sky meet in eternal balance. When winter comes, the hills turn silver with frost, and the dolmens seem to sink deeper into the earth. Crows perch upon their tops. The mist moves low, wrapping each stone in a shroud. The world falls silent, and in that silence you can almost hear the echoes of drums, faint, distant, ancient. Perhaps those sounds are memory, the heartbeat of rituals long gone. Or perhaps they are imagination, stirred by the sight of something so enduring that it defies time itself. For generations, the people of Korea have lived beside these stones, farmers plowing around them, children playing in their shadows, monks meditating near their presence. They became part of the landscape, part of the rhythm of daily life. But to the ancestors, they were more than scenery. They were sacred. Some of the dolmens bear faint marks, carvings that might once have been symbols, circles, or faces. Most are worn beyond recognition. The rain has smoothed their surfaces. The wind has whispered over them for millennia. The stones have listened, but they do not speak. In 2000, UNESCO recognized the dolmen sites of Korea as World Heritage Monuments, calling them the most representative and largest group of megalithic structures in the world. But even that label, archaeological, historical, fails to capture what they truly are. Because standing among them, you don't feel like you're in a ruin. You feel like you're in a presence. As the day fades and the mist thickens, the hills turn blue under the twilight. The dolmens cast long shadows, merging with the fog. The air grows still. You can sense the immense patience of these stones, the centuries they have waited, the lives they have witnessed. Each dolmen has outlived countless generations. Each has felt rain, snow, sunlight, and war. They have seen kingdoms crumble, forests vanish, rivers change course, and still, they stand, as if guarding something invisible. Some say they are tombs, others say they are altars, but maybe they are both, monuments to the human need to remember, to honor, to connect the earth and sky. And perhaps deep within the soil beneath them, the bones of forgotten ancestors still rest, surrounded by the same silence that fills the fields today. As the stars begin to pierce the night, and the mist slowly lifts, the dolmens take on a faint silver glow. Their shapes emerge once more, ancient and eternal. The wind carries the scent of grass and stone. The world feels older here, slower, wiser. And if you listen closely, you might hear what the ancients heard, the murmur of the earth, the breath of the sky, and the endless rhythm that binds the living to the dead. These are not just stones, they are the memory of humanity, set into the hills to last forever. The dolmen fields of Korea remind us that long before nations, before kings, before names, there were people who looked at the stars, at the soil, and decided to build something that could stand between the two. A message for those who would come after, and thousands of years later, as the mist drifts and the first light of morning touches their cold surfaces, that message still remains, silent, simple, and eternal. We were here, we remembered, and so will you. The monasteries of Meteora. High above the green valleys of central Greece, where the morning fog curls like ghostly rivers around towering pillars of stone, something ancient waits for the sun. As dawn light bleeds across the sky, the cliffs ignite in gold, and you see them, the monasteries of Meteora. Floating between heaven and earth, they seem less like buildings, and more like prayers carved into the sky. For centuries people have wondered, who built them here, and why did they choose this place, suspended between rock and cloud? This is the story of faith that defied gravity, of devotion stronger than stone, the story of Meteora. The name Meteora comes from the Greek word meteoros, meaning suspended in air, and that's exactly what these monasteries look like, as if the earth tried to reach up and touch the heavens. There are 6 still standing today, though once there were more than 20. Each one rests atop a sandstone pinnacle, hundreds of feet above the valley floor, unreachable except by rope, ladder, or pure courage. The first monks came here over 1,000 years ago. They were hermits, men who sought silence, solitude, and the presence of God. They carved small shelters into the cliffs, sleeping in caves so high that even birds avoided them. Down below, the world was falling apart. Empires crumbled, wars raged, but up here, in the endless wind, there was only stillness. By the 14th century, the solitude became a sanctuary. The Byzantine Empire was dying, and Ottoman forces spread across Greece. The monks needed protection, not just for their lives, but for their way of life. So they built where no army could follow, on the peaks of Meteora. Imagine the scene, men hauling stones, wood, and tools up sheer cliffs using ropes and baskets, working with nothing but their faith in their hands. Every brick, every beam, lifted through the air by determination alone. There were no roads, no cranes, no machines, only belief. The monasteries grew into living fortresses of spirituality. Their walls echoed with chanting, their halls filled with candlelight and the scent of incense. From up there the monks could look out across the Thessalian plain and see the world, but remain untouched by it. Inside, frescoes tell stories in color and shadow. Saints with solemn eyes, angels with wings of flame, martyrs painted in scenes of both suffering and grace. Time moved differently here. Days began with bells and ended in prayer. The outside world became a rumor. Kingdoms rose and fell, but Meteora remained. Even the rocks themselves seemed to protect them. Scientists say these cliffs were formed millions of years ago, when a great river carved through soft stone, leaving behind these impossible towers. But to the monks, this was divine architecture, a landscape shaped by the hand of God, waiting for their devotion to fill it. When travelers first saw Meteora centuries later, they couldn't believe it was real. They called it a miracle in stone. Artists painted it, poets wrote about it, and even emperors whispered of its mystery. Yet not everything here was peace. Storms tore at the ropes. Many fell to their deaths trying to climb or descend. In times of invasion, the monks pulled the ladders up, isolating themselves completely, sometimes for months, sometimes for years. To outsiders, it looked like madness. But for those who lived here, it was a kind of freedom no one else could understand. As centuries passed, the world below changed again. Roads appeared, wars came and went. The monasteries too began to fade. Some were abandoned, others fell into ruin. But a few endured. Saint Stephen, Great Meteoron, Varlam, Rusanu, each one still rising above the mist, each one a heartbeat of the ancient faith that built it. Today pilgrims and travelers still come. They climb winding paths and stone steps, standing where monks once prayed in silence. Some come for history, others for peace, but all leave with a feeling that's hard to describe, something between awe and humility. Because when you stand on the edge of Meteora, looking out across the endless horizon, it's impossible not to feel small, and somehow, infinite. The monasteries are more than stone and mortar. They're the embodiment of what happens when belief meets the impossible, a place where humanity reached upward and touched the sky, not to conquer it, but to live within it. And as the sun sinks behind the cliffs and the bells ring softly through the valley, the wind carries a single truth. Faith, real faith, doesn't need to stand on the ground. It can hang, suspended forever, between heaven and earth. The tomb towers of Palmyra. In the heart of the Syrian desert, where the sand glows gold beneath a merciless sun, stand the remains of a city once called the Bride of the Desert, Palmyra. It was a place of trade and beauty, of temples and silk, of travelers and kings. But beyond its columns and fallen stones, beyond the temples of Bel and Baal-Shemin, rise something far older, far stranger, the tomb towers. From a distance they look like broken teeth jutting out of the sand, square towers reaching for the sky, silent and watchful. Their stones are sunburned and scarred, their carvings worn thin by time. Yet each one once held the lives, the faces, the memories of people who refused to be forgotten. These are not ordinary graves. They are monuments to a vanished civilization, a people who dreamed of eternity and built it with their own hands. Long before Palmyra was ruins, it was an oasis, a place where caravans from Persia, India, and Rome met in the middle of the desert. Here merchants brought silk, spices, ivory, and incense. Wealth flowed like wind, and so did ideas. Gods from Greece, rituals from Babylon, language from Arabia. Palmyra became a crossroads of worlds, and in its golden age, its people believed death should be as grand as life. So they built tombs that reached toward heaven. Each tower was a family's final home, 4, sometimes 5 stories high, carved from limestone and sandstone, each level lined with long burial shelves, hundreds of them. The wealthy filled them with fine linens, jewelry, and carved portraits of their loved ones. These weren't simple markers. Each face was sculpted in stone, gazing outward for eternity. Inside the towers, time stood still. Cool air hung heavy with the scent of dust and history. Light filtered through narrow windows, touching the carved eyes of men, women, and children long gone. They were merchants, nobles, priests, the beating heart of a city that connected the ancient world. Archaeologists say the earliest of these towers were built around the 1st century BCE, when Palmyra was at the height of its power. The city had grown rich on trade routes linking east and west. The tombs were more than graves, they were symbols of legacy. To be buried in a tower was to declare one's family eternal. But as empires changed, so did Palmyra's fate. Rome came, then rebellion, then silence. The desert crept closer. The city's columns fell, its walls crumbled, and the tombs became watchtowers over an empire of sand. When early explorers rediscovered Palmyra in the 17th century, they found the tomb towers still standing, half buried, half broken, but proud. Inside, they saw walls covered with inscriptions, some still clear enough to read. Names, prayers, small messages to the gods, each line a whisper from 2,000 years ago. And then there were the portraits, hundreds of them, sculpted in relief, showing faces frozen in eternal calm. Some smiled faintly, others looked solemn, almost fearful, as if they knew what the centuries would bring. Many had Greek or Aramaic inscriptions beside them, small dedications carved by hands that turned to dust long ago. The tomb towers weren't the only kind of burial in Palmyra. There were also underground tombs, called hypogea, and great house-like mausoleums built of stone. But the towers were the most striking. They dominated the necropolis, vast cities of the dead, stretching beyond the walls of Palmyra itself. From the top of a tower, a family could look across the desert and see the life they'd built. The caravan routes shimmering in the heat, the temples, the marketplace, the distant mountains. It was as if the dead could keep watch over the living. In the 2nd century, one name rose above the rest, Zabdillah, or as history remembers him, Alavel. His tomb tower was one of the grandest ever built. The entrance was framed by Corinthian columns. Inside, inscriptions told of his lineage, his wealth, his devotion to the gods. Alavel was buried with his entire family, surrounded by statues of their likenesses. For centuries, travelers spoke of the Tower of Alavel as the finest in the desert, a masterpiece of art and faith. But the desert keeps no promises. Time, war, and greed took their toll. When modern conflict swept through Syria, Palmyra once again became a battlefield. In the chaos, the tomb towers suffered. Many were reduced to rubble, their carvings shattered, their stories buried anew. The Tower of Alavel, that monument to endurance, was destroyed. What took ancient hands decades to build was erased in seconds. Yet even in ruin, the spirit of Palmyra survives. Every broken column, every fragment of sculpture, speaks of what was lost and what still endures. The human desire to remember, to be remembered, to reach for eternity. For centuries, people have tried to decode the meaning behind the tower's design. Why so tall? Why stacked graves instead of flat crypts? Some believe the height symbolized the soul's journey upward, a staircase for the spirit to ascend to the heavens. Others say it was a reflection of power, a way for the living to show their status even in death. Whatever the reason, the result is hauntingly beautiful. In the twilight, when the sun bleeds out across the desert and shadows climb the stone, the towers seem alive. The air hums with heat, and the horizon blurs into gold and crimson. You can almost imagine the city as it was, alive with merchants and camels, with laughter and song, with prayers carried on the wind. The people of Palmyra knew that life was fleeting, Empires crumble, riches vanish, and even gods are forgotten. But stone endures. So they built their memories in stone, and in doing so, they defied oblivion. Today, when archaeologists brush away the sand from a fallen relief or uncover a forgotten inscription, it's like hearing a heartbeat from another world. A woman named Halepa, a merchant named Maliku, a child called Timar, their names still echo in the tombs. Their eyes carved in stone still look back at us. Palmyra was a city of balance between life and death, east and west, faith and reason. Its towers are more than ruins. They are a message from a civilization that understood impermanence and dared to challenge it. As the desert night falls, the stars emerge one by one over the ruins. The wind moves through the empty windows, carrying the faint echo of voices long gone. And somewhere out there, beneath the sand, the lost towers still stand in spirit, not just as relics of the past, but as reminders of how far humanity will go to be remembered. The tomb towers of Palmyra were not built for gods or kings, but for people, fathers, mothers, daughters, sons. Each tower was a promise that their lives, their love, and their legacy would not fade. And even now, as centuries turn to dust and empires to echoes, that promise remains unbroken. Because as long as someone remembers, as long as someone whispers the name Palmyra, the towers still rise, invisible but eternal, against the desert sky. The Pyramid of Caral. In the vast desert plateau of Peru, where the wind hums through empty valleys and the sand glows pale beneath the Andean sun, lies something older than the Inca, older even than the pyramids of Egypt. A city of stone and silence, hidden for millennia, waiting for the world to remember it. Its name is Caral, the oldest known civilization in the Americas. Long before Machu Picchu rose among the clouds, before Cusco became an empire, Caral was already ancient. 6 pyramids rise from the desert floor, weathered by thousands of years of wind and time. They do not glimmer or shine, their stones are plain and sun-bleached, yet beneath that simplicity lies one of the greatest mysteries of human history. Who built Caral, and how did a civilization so advanced vanish into the dust without a trace of war, conquest, or bloodshed? The story begins nearly 5,000 years ago, around 2600 BCE, when most of the world was still learning to shape stone and clay, while Egypt's first pharaohs were laying the foundations of their kingdom, and Mesopotamia was inventing writing. The people of the Supe Valley in Peru were already building pyramids. They had no metal, no wheels, no beasts of burden, and yet they raised a city of monumental scale, using nothing but stone, reed, and human will. Caral sits high above the river valley, spread across more than 150 acres of desert. Its pyramids are arranged with eerie precision, aligned to the stars and the rhythm of the seasons. At its heart lies the Great Pyramid, a massive terraced structure that dominates the city like a silent guardian. Around it are sunken circular plazas, ceremonial platforms, and houses made of woven reed and clay. When you walk through its ruins even today, you feel the weight of something purposeful, a design guided not by power or greed, but by harmony. Archaeologists say Caral was a city built on peace. There are no weapons here, no signs of fortresses, no burned walls, no bones of war. Instead, they found flutes made of condor bones, drums carved from animal skin, and evidence of feasts and festivals that brought people together from miles around. The people of Caral worshipped the forces of nature, the sun, the earth, the wind, and especially the river that gave them life. They built temples not to gods of conquest, but to the balance between heaven and earth. In the heart of Caral, beneath layers of sand, archaeologists uncovered a small woven bag filled with quipu, knots of string used for record-keeping. This discovery stunned the world. It meant the people of Caral may have invented this system thousands of years before the Inca, using it to count harvests, measure trade, and perhaps even tell stories. It also meant that Caral wasn't a village, it was a civilization. Each pyramid was built in layers. When a building grew old, instead of tearing it down, they buried it and built a new one on top, creating a timeline of devotion that stretched across centuries. Some pyramids hold the ashes of offerings, bundles of reeds, feathers, and charred plants, small sacrifices made to thank the earth. This was a people who didn't build to dominate nature, but to live in rhythm with it. But what drove them to create something so vast, in such a harsh land? The answer may lie in trade. Caral sat at the crossroads of ancient routes that stretched from the coast to the highlands. They exchanged goods with fishing villages, farmers, and hunters. From the ocean came shells, salt, and dried fish. From the mountains came fruits, herbs, and obsidian. Caral became the heart of a network, a web of life that stretched across ancient Peru. At night, the people of Caral watched the stars. Their temples align with constellations still visible today, the Pleiades, Orion, and the Southern Cross. Some believe the city was built as an earthly reflection of the heavens, its pyramids mirroring the movement of the stars. The priests of Caral may have been astronomers, using the sky to mark time, predict floods, and honor the cycles that sustain them. In 1948, when explorers first stumbled upon the ruins, they thought it was a simple village. The stone mounds seemed ordinary, the walls too plain to suggest greatness. But decades later, in the 1990s, archaeologist Ruth Shady led a new expedition, and everything changed. As she dug deeper, layer by layer, she realized she wasn't looking at a small settlement. She was standing in the cradle of a lost civilization. Carbon dating revealed the impossible. Karl was nearly 5,000 years old, making it the oldest known city in the Americas. It forced historians to rewrite the timeline of human civilization. Before Karl, the story of the Americas seemed to begin with small farming communities and scattered tribes, but Karl proved that an advanced, organized society existed here long before the rise of the great Andean empires. It showed that civilization didn't begin in war, but in cooperation. There is something haunting about the silence of Karl. The wind moves through the empty plazas like a whisper from the past. The sun sets behind the pyramids, and the desert cools. In that stillness, you can almost hear music, the echo of flutes, the rhythm of drums, the laughter of people gathered in celebration. It is said that Karl's festivals were great gatherings. People from miles away came to trade, sing, and dance in the plazas beneath the stars. But like all golden ages, Karl's light eventually faded. The river changed course. Drought struck the land. Without water, the valley withered. Slowly, the people abandoned their city. They did not burn it or destroy it. They simply walked away, leaving their pyramids to the desert. For thousands of years, Karl slept beneath sand in silence, its name forgotten even by those who lived nearby. And yet, even after centuries of neglect, the architecture of Karl still speaks. The design of its pyramids, the layout of its plazas, the precision of its construction, all point to an intelligence and unity that defies its age. These people were not primitive. They were visionaries, builders of stone and peace, artists of time and nature. Unlike so many other civilizations that rose and fell through conquest, Karl's legacy is one of creation. It is a reminder that human greatness does not always come from war or empire, but from understanding, from learning to live in balance with the world around us. When you stand at the top of the Great Pyramid of Karl and look out over the barren valley, the view stretches endlessly: sand, mountains, silence. But in that silence lies the heartbeat of a forgotten people. A heartbeat that shaped a continent long before the rest of the world even knew it existed. Karl's pyramids may not reach the height of Giza, nor dazzle with gold, but they hold something deeper, the story of humanity's first dream of harmony. A world without kings or armies, without slaves or tyrants. A world built on community, music, and reverence for the earth. Even today, as the wind sweeps across its plateau, Karl feels alive. The stones still catch the morning light. The plazas still hold the footprints of those who gathered here. And perhaps, somewhere beneath the layers of sand, more secrets wait to be uncovered. New stories, new names, new voices from a time before time. The people of Karl have long vanished, but what they built endures, not just in stone, but in the idea they left behind. That civilization can begin with peace, that progress can be measured not in power, but in understanding. As night falls over the desert, the stars appear one by one, the same stars that once guided the builders of Karl. The wind moves softly through the ruins, carrying with it the echoes of flutes and the rhythm of ancient drums. And in that timeless sound, you can still feel their presence, a people who built pyramids not to worship gods or rulers, but to honor life itself. Karl was the first voice of the Americas, a whisper from humanity's dawn. And though the desert has taken their words, their message remains. We are not here to conquer the earth, but to live with it, to build, to create, to remember. And as long as the pyramids stand, silent, patient, eternal, that message endures, written not in ink or stone, but in the endless wind of the Peruvian desert, the monoliths of Wadi Rum. In the heart of Jordan's southern desert lies a place that feels like another world, a valley of fire and stone, where mountains rise like giants from seas of red sand, and the wind hums like an ancient song. The Bedouin call it Wadi Rum, the Valley of the Moon. But to those who stand within its vast silence, it feels older than memory itself. The desert of Wadi Rum is not empty. It breathes. When the first light of dawn spills across the sandstone cliffs, the rocks burn crimson, then fade to gold. Shadows stretch like fingers, carving patterns across the dunes. Every gust of wind reshapes the earth, sculpting curves, erasing footprints, whispering stories the desert has kept for millennia. Towering above the sands are the monoliths, colossal pillars of stone that rise hundreds of meters into the sky. Some stand alone, sharp and proud like sentinels. Others form walls and canyons that twist through the valley like labyrinths. To the Bedouin, these monoliths are alive, ancient spirits turned to stone, guarding the secrets of the desert. Scientists say these formations began as simple layers of sandstone, carved over millions of years by wind, rain, and time. But when you stand beneath one, gazing up at its impossible height, logic fades. The rock seems to speak, not in words but in presence. Wadi Rum is a land of paradox. It feels eternal, yet it changes every hour. It looks lifeless, yet it pulses with hidden energy. Beneath its red dunes lie traces of rivers long vanished, of people long forgotten. Carvings etched into the cliffs show camels, hunters, and gods, proof that thousands of years ago, life thrived here. Nomads crossed these valleys when the Sahara was still green. They left behind their stories carved into the stone, their prayers, victories, and dreams. When archaeologists began exploring Wadi Rum, they found more than just carvings. They uncovered temples, altars, and inscriptions in ancient Thamudic and Nabatean scripts. The people who once walked here were traders, shepherds, poets. This desert, which now seems so remote, was once a crossroads, a gateway between Arabia, Egypt, and the Levant. At night, Wadi Rum transforms, the sky turns black and infinite, stars appear in their thousands, sharp as diamonds. You can see the Milky Way so clearly it looks like a river of light. The silence deepens until the only sound is the wind moving through the canyons. For those who camp beneath the monoliths, it feels like sleeping at the edge of the universe. And in the midst of this timeless beauty, one rock stands above all, Jebel Ishrin, the mountain of the tribes. Its cliffs rise more than 1,700 meters, streaked with red and black, carved into terraces and towers. Legends say spirits dwell within its caves. The Bedouin tell stories of voices carried on the wind, of lights flickering deep inside the rock. Scientists call them mirages, tricks of heat and shadow. But those who've spent nights in the valley know better. The desert has moods, and it remembers. Far to the west stands another monolith, Jebel Khazali. In its narrow canyon, travelers find walls covered in ancient inscriptions. Some are over 3,000 years old, names of lost tribes, prayers for rain, drawings of dancers, hunters, and stars. These carvings were not random, they were communication across time. Each mark was a message to the future. We were here, we lived, we loved this place. The sandstone itself tells stories. Look closely, and you see patterns, ripples frozen in stone, the memory of an ancient sea that once covered this land. Long before humans carved their marks, Wadi Rum was ocean floor. Then came fire, wind, and the long sculpting of eternity. What remains today are monuments of patience, the earth's own sculptures, born of chaos and time. Centuries later, the Bedouin made Wadi Rum their home. They built no walls, no cities. Their homes were made of tents woven from goat hair, easy to move with the seasons. They knew every canyon, every echo, every star. For them, the desert was not an enemy, it was family. The monoliths were their companions, landmarks guiding them across endless sand. They spoke of the 7 pillars of wisdom, a formation so striking it seems almost man-made, 7 towering ridges rising side by side from the desert floor. When the sun sets behind them, their shadows stretch for miles. The name was given new fame by T.E. Lawrence, the man the world came to know as Lawrence of Arabia. During the Arab Revolt of 1917, Lawrence passed through Wadi Rum with Bedouin fighters. He wrote of its silence, its majesty, and how it made every man feel small before nature's hand. The sun made the rocks glow red like fire, he wrote, and we were shadows moving across the embers of creation. Even today, standing there feels cinematic, like stepping into a dream of another planet. That's why filmmakers come here again and again. Lawrence of Arabia, The Martian, Dune, all were shot in Wadi Rum. The valley's vastness defies imagination. It looks alien, but it's real. No set, no computer can recreate the way light moves across that sand, or how silence seems to echo. But beyond the beauty and legend, Wadi Rum holds danger too. Its silence can deceive. Temperatures soar by day and plummet at night. Sandstorms rise without warning, swallowing tracks and tents in minutes. Travelers say the desert tests every part of you, body, mind, spirit. You can't conquer Wadi Rum, you can only surrender to it. When rain does fall, once or twice a year, the desert transforms. Tiny flowers bloom overnight, painting the sand with color. Water fills the hidden pools, and the air smells of life. Then, as quickly as it came, the green fades, and the red returns. The desert reclaims itself, patient and eternal. For the Bedouin, Wadi Rum is sacred because it endures. Empires have risen and fallen beyond its borders. Egypt, Rome, Persia, Britain, yet here nothing changes. The same stars, the same cliffs, the same wind. It humbles you, reminding you how brief our time is, and how vast the world remains. Archaeologists still search its caves for clues to those who came before. Some believe the valley was once a spiritual center, where nomads gathered to mark the solstices and honor their gods. Others say it was a place of passage, a stop on the long trade routes from the incense lands of Arabia to the shores of the Mediterranean. Whatever the truth, Wadi Rum was never just a desert. It was a stage where human history whispered across ages. When you stand atop one of its cliffs at dusk, the valley below looks endless. The dunes fade into violet shadow, the air stills, and the horizon glows like molten copper. In that moment, you feel what ancient travelers must have felt: awe, fear, and belonging all at once. You realize that this desert is not lifeless, it is simply timeless. The monoliths of Wadi Rum are not monuments built by man, they are monuments to man, reminders of how small we are, and yet how deeply we crave to understand the infinite. Every carving, every trail, every echo through the canyons is a conversation between humanity and the earth itself. At night, when the wind quiets and the stars burn brighter than anywhere else on earth, you can almost hear the pulse of creation. The same stars that once guided the Nabateans, the Bedouin, and Lawrence, now shine over your head. The same silence that shaped their songs fills your ears. And somewhere out there, between the pillars of stone, the desert keeps its secrets, unchanged, unbroken, eternal. Wadi Rum is not just a place, it is a memory written in sand and light, a poem carved by wind, a cathedral without walls. The monoliths stand like verses of that poem, each one a line written by the earth herself, and as long as they stand, glowing beneath the Jordanian sun, the story of Wadi Rum, the story of silence, endurance, and wonder, will never fade. The cliff tombs of Lycia. They rise from the cliffs like windows into another world, silent, watching, carved from the living rock. Along the turquoise coast of Turkey, where the mountains fall into the sea, lie the ancient tombs of Lycia, a civilization that turned stone into eternity. The cliffs above the Aegean are warm and golden, but their faces are marked by thousands of doors, facades of temples, houses, and shrines, each leading not to the living, but to the afterlife. The Lycian people believed the soul did not simply die, it traveled, and to travel, it needed to be close to the sky. That's why their tombs are high above the earth, unreachable, carved into cliffs that face the sea. From a distance, they look like miniature cities built into the mountain, glowing in the sun. From up close, you see the work of hands that shaped every column, every lintel, every doorway. These are not random graves, they are messages, stone letters written to eternity. The Lycians, who lived more than 2,500 years ago, were a proud and mysterious people. Their language was their own, unlike Greek or Persian, and their art mixed both East and West. They built no pyramids, no ziggurats, but they left behind a landscape unlike anything else on earth, mountains filled with tombs that look like homes, because to them death was not an ending, but a continuation of life. Travelers along the coast of Lycia, in places like Myra, Konos, Telmessos, and Phaethia, can still see these tombs today. Some are simple rectangles cut into the rock. Others are elaborate, fronted by columns and pediments that mimic the wooden houses the Lycians once lived in. The rock faces above Phaethia are filled with them, rising tier upon tier, like a city built for spirits. The most famous of all is the tomb of Amytas. Carved into the cliffs above the city, it stands like a temple from another age. Its entrance is guarded by tall Ionic columns. Its door, carved directly from stone, looks ready to open. Inside lies silence, a single chamber, empty but heavy with presence. The inscriptions are faint, worn by centuries of wind, but they whisper the same truth, that the Lycians sought to keep their dead close to the heavens. When the first explorers rediscovered these tombs in the 19th century, they were stunned. No one could understand how ancient builders had managed to carve so high into the cliffs with tools so primitive. Some tombs are more than 200 feet above the valley floor. The rock-cut facades are perfectly symmetrical, balanced, and still sharp after millennia. It was as if the mountain itself had been persuaded, not forced, to give up its secrets. Archaeologists later learned that the Lycians buried their dead with care, not just in tombs but in sarcophagi scattered across the landscape. Each sarcophagus was shaped like a small boat, its lid curved like an inverted hull. It was said the soul would sail from this world to the next, guided by spirits through the wind and sea. Even their mythology reflects this. Lycian legends spoke of winged beings who carried the souls of heroes to the stars. That's why the tombs face outward, toward the horizon, toward freedom. The cliffs were chosen so that the dead could look forever over the valleys, the forests, and the sea. In a sense, they were never gone. They watched over the living, from above. As centuries passed, invaders came, Persians, Greeks, Romans. Each added layers to Lycian's identity, but the tombs endured. They became part of the landscape, part of the myth. When Alexander the Great conquered the region, his soldiers were said to have stopped in awe before these cliffs. They thought the gods themselves must have built them. Even today, standing beneath them feels unreal. The air smells of pine and salt, the cicadas sing, the waves crash far below, and above you, hundreds of doorways open into shadow. You feel watched, but not in fear. It's a presence that feels eternal. The Lycians may have vanished, but their tombs remain as bridges between the living and the dead. The carvings tell us what the Lycians valued: symmetry, harmony, and the belief that the soul deserved a home even after life. Unlike the Egyptians, who filled their tombs with treasures, the Lycians left them bare. What mattered was not wealth, but the journey, the idea that the spirit would travel light, guided only by memory and wind. Beneath the cliffs, ancient cities once thrived, roads lined with columns, theaters cut into stone, temples to gods whose names we barely remember. In Myra, the ruins still stand, arches, gateways, and a theater large enough for 10,000 people, and above it all, like a crown, the tombs stare down from the cliffs, eternal witnesses to time. The Lycians were seafarers too. Their ships traveled from island to island, carrying goods, stories, and art. They traded with Egypt and Crete, with Greece and Cyprus. They spoke many tongues but kept their own soul intact. Even when they fell under Persian rule, they remained distinct. Their tombs became symbols of defiance, each one saying, "You may rule our land, but not our spirits." And perhaps that is why their legacy still feels alive. The cliff tombs are not ruins, they are memories carved in stone. They defy time because they were made not to impress, but to endure. Every chisel mark still carries the rhythm of hands that believed in forever. Over the centuries, the elements have softened their edges. Rain has run down their faces, carving channels into the stone. Moss grows between the columns. Birds nest in their doorways. But even in decay, they are beautiful. The limestone glows gold in the sun. And in the evening, when the sky turns pink, the tombs seem to float, suspended between heaven and earth. There are legends that some of these tombs were never just graves. Some say they were portals, gateways for spirits, or for those who sought visions of the divine. Shamans and priests might have come to meditate within, believing the cliffs were places where the world of the living touched the world beyond. The mountains of Lycia were sacred long before the first tomb was carved. They were believed to be the homes of gods and heroes. To carve one's tomb there was to share their eternity. In the valleys below, life went on. Farmers tending vines, fishermen mending nets, markets filled with voices. The tombs above watched silently. And when the people of Lycia finally disappeared, absorbed by empires and time, the tombs remained. No invader could destroy them, because they were part of the mountain itself. Today travelers still walk the Lycian Way, a trail that runs for hundreds of kilometers along the coast. It winds through olive groves, ancient ruins, and sea cliffs. Every so often, the path turns and reveals a wall of stone tombs glowing in the sun, the same sight that greeted sailors thousands of years ago. It's as if time folds, and for a moment, the ancient world breathes again. And it's in that moment that you feel what the Lycians must have felt, that strange, beautiful peace between life and death. The tombs don't mourn, they don't warn, they simply exist, reminding us that everything built with faith, with purpose, can last beyond the fall of nations. The turquoise coast shimmers below, the mountains behind rise like waves of stone, and between them in the cliffs sleep the people who once called this paradise home. Their tombs face the horizon, still watching the sunrise each day. Perhaps that's the greatest mystery of all. They built for death, but what they left behind is filled with life. The cliff tombs of Lycia are not just relics, they are an idea carved into the earth. The idea that memory can outlast dust, that faith can shape mountains, that beauty can be eternal. And so, as the sun sets over the Aegean, painting the cliffs in firelight, the tombs glow once more, quiet, timeless, and alive. The Lycians are gone, their cities are ruins, but their gaze endures, from the cliffs, across the sea, into eternity. The citadel of Bam, Argi Bam, Iran. In the vast deserts of southeastern Iran, where the sun burns the sand into glass, and the wind hums across empty plains, there rises a city made of earth itself, silent, golden, and eternal. This is Bam, a citadel so vast and ancient that no one truly knows when it began. The locals call it Argi Bam, the fortress of Bam, and for centuries it was the beating heart of the Silk Road. From a distance it looks like a mirage, a maze of towers, walls, and winding streets glowing amber in the sun. But as you draw closer, the illusion becomes real. The city unfolds from the desert like something grown, not built. Its walls rise from the same clay as the earth around it, blurring the line between nature and civilization. It is both fortress and dream, a memory of a world where time itself seemed slower. No one knows who first laid its foundations. Some say it began nearly 2,500 years ago, during the Achaemenid Empire, when Persia ruled from the Indus to the Nile. Others believe its roots stretch even deeper, into forgotten kingdoms before written history. What we do know is that for more than a millennium, Bam was alive, a living fortress of mud brick and courage. The people of Bam built with adobe, sun-dried clay mixed with straw, simple yet strong. With it they raised walls over 7 kilometers long, crowned by towers and gates that once protected thousands of homes, shops, and temples. The citadel stood not only as a fortress, but as a thriving city, filled with markets, gardens, and music echoing down narrow lanes. From its highest point, the commander's keep, you could see everything: the oasis spreading below, the mountains in the distance, and the long road east and west, the arteries of the Silk Road. Every caravan that passed through Iran carried spices, silk, and secrets, and many found safety within Bam's walls. The city was not built for war alone, it was built for life. The houses, though made of mud, were masterpieces of design. Their domed roofs cooled the air, their courtyards held shade and stillness. Beneath the city, underground channels, called qanats, carried water from distant mountains, turning the desert into an oasis. Gardens bloomed, date palms swayed, and fountains sang in the courtyards of merchants and nobles alike. To live in Bam was to live in balance, between earth and sky, between heat and coolness, between the harshness of the desert and the comfort of human craft. The city's rhythm was simple: sunrise over the desert, markets stirring with color and sound, children running through alleyways of gold dust, the evening call to prayer echoing across the walls. But Bam was also a fortress of mystery. Within its highest citadel, the rulers of the region once lived: governors, soldiers, and scholars. From here, commands went out to the farthest reaches of Persia. The citadel's thick walls held both power and legend. Stories tell of secret tunnels, hidden chambers, and ghosts of soldiers who never left their posts. The people said the wind in the towers carried the voices of their ancestors, whispers of history in the language of dust. As centuries passed, empires rose and fell around Bam. The Achaemenids gave way to the Parthians to the Sassanids, and the Sassanids to the armies of Islam. Through all this, Bam endured. It was too essential, too perfect in its purpose. It protected the trade routes and the people who lived by them. Even the Mongols, whose armies burned much of Asia, left Bam standing. By the medieval period, the citadel had become one of the great strongholds of Persia. Its gates were said to be unbreakable, its watchtowers manned day and night. Travelers described it as a wonder, a city of clay that could withstand both the sword and the storm. And yet, for all its might, Bam was not immortal. In the 18th and 19th centuries, war and neglect began to eat away at its strength. As new trade routes opened and empires modernized, Bam's importance faded. Its people drifted away, leaving the fortress to the desert wind. The once busy markets fell silent, the qanats dried, the walls crumbled inch by inch. By the 20th century, Argi Bam was a ruin, majestic but hollow. The wind became its only inhabitant. The desert began reclaiming what it once gave. Still, even in ruin, Bam was breathtaking. Its towers glowed at sunset like dying embers. Its empty streets held a silence that felt ancient and kind. Then, one morning in December 2003, the earth itself turned against it. A massive earthquake struck Bam, one of the worst in Iran's history. In seconds, most of the ancient citadel was reduced to dust. Over 26,000 people lost their lives. The fortress that had survived 2 millennia of invasion, drought, and empire fell to the ground in a single moment. When the dust cleared, all that remained were fragments, broken walls, fallen towers, the shattered heart of a civilization. But what happened next was something extraordinary. The people of Iran and the world refused to let Bam die. Archaeologists, architects, and local families began the long work of rebuilding. Stone by stone, brick by brick, they studied the ruins, pieced together the patterns, and brought the city back to life. The process took years, and it continues today. With modern techniques and ancient wisdom, they resurrected the citadel, not as a museum, but as a living memory. Walking through Bam today feels like walking through time. Some sections are still scarred, rough walls, half-rebuilt arches, the skeletons of towers. But in others, the fortress rises once more. Proud and silent, its form reborn from dust. The city breathes again, though its heart beats softly. For Iranians, Bam is more than history. It is identity. It is proof that from ruin, beauty can rise again. The earthquake did not destroy Bam's soul, it revealed it. The people who rebuild it do not work in despair, they work in faith, because they know that this citadel, made of mere clay, holds the weight of centuries, and so the fortress stands again over the desert, just as it always did, a reminder that civilizations are fragile, but their spirit endures. The light of dawn still falls across its ramparts. The desert wind still hums through its streets. The silence once again feels alive. Bam is a paradox, a city made of dust that refuses to die. It represents everything humanity is capable of: creation, destruction, and rebirth. To stand there among its golden walls is to feel both sorrow and hope. Sorrow for what was lost, hope for what was rebuilt. The city's layers tell its story. The oldest walls are rough and uneven, made by hands that shaped them with little more than faith. The newer ones are smoother, stronger, made by modern craftsmen honoring their ancestors. Side by side, they show the continuity of the human spirit, unbroken, resilient, eternal. And when the sun sets over the desert, the citadel glows again, the same color it must have glowed thousands of years ago. The shadows stretch across the sand, the air cools, and the wind carries the faint scent of clay and memory. From the highest tower, the view is endless, dunes fading into night, stars rising above the horizon, and silence deep enough to feel sacred. The citadel of Bam is more than stone. It is a message from the past to the future, that what we build with purpose never truly disappears. Time may take its form, but not its meaning. Empires crumble, walls fall, earthquakes shake the ground, but memory endures, and perhaps that is why Bam still stands. Not because it resists destruction, but because it teaches resilience. In its silence lies the sound of every hand that ever built it, every voice that ever echoed through its streets, every life that once found shelter within its walls. The fortress of Bam is not just a ruin reborn, it is a promise carved in clay, that even when the world collapses, we can build again, that from dust, life returns, that no matter how fragile we are capable of eternity. The throne of Copan. In the heart of Honduras, where the jungle breathes through stone and vines curl around the bones of forgotten kings, lies a place where time itself seems to kneel. Copan. Once this city was the beating heart of a Maya kingdom, a place of mathematicians, astronomers, and rulers who spoke with the gods. And at its center, carved from the jungle's own strength, stood a seat unlike any other, the throne of Copan. The story of this throne is not just about a ruler's power, it's about a civilization that tried to understand the cosmos through stone. To the Maya, every shape, every line, every carving was a language, and the throne was their scripture made manifest. It wasn't built merely for sitting, it was a portal, a bridge between the mortal and divine. Long before Copan was ruins, it was rhythm, the rhythm of drums, of chants echoing through plazas, of starlight reflected in jade eyes. The city rose along the Copan River, its plazas aligned not randomly, but precisely to the heavens. The architects of this world believed power came not from domination, but from balance. The ruler's role was to keep harmony between the sky and earth. The throne symbolized that balance. Imagine standing before it when it was new, gleaming limestone, polished to a shine. Its legs were jaguar paws, its back shaped like a celestial serpent, and its seat carried glyphs of creation. Every symbol was chosen with purpose, the jaguar for power, the serpent for wisdom, the sun for rebirth. When a ruler sat upon it, they didn't just lead, they transformed. The Maya called their kings Kuhula Jau, Holy Lord. These were not just political figures, they were embodiments of cosmic order. In Copan, the most legendary of them was 18 Rabbit, a name that sounds playful but to his people it was sacred. Under his reign, art flourished, calendars advanced, and the city became a living equation of heaven and earth. It was he who commissioned the throne, not as a mere seat, but as a statement to eternity. Yet power attracts envy, and balance is fragile. The gods who gave the Maya their wisdom also tested their pride. As Copan grew, so did its hunger. For labor, for tribute, for the endless building of temples to reach the stars. 18 Rabbit's throne became both a symbol of greatness and a reminder of limits. Archaeologists found it buried deep in what they now call Structure 11, beneath layers of history. Around it were offerings, jade beads, obsidian knives, and shells from distant seas. Every object told a fragment of a story, that this was not simply where a man ruled, but where he spoke with gods. The carvings across the throne's base tell one of those stories. They show the ruler seated upon it, but around him, not courtiers, not soldiers, but celestial beings, stars, serpents, deities with masks of fire and wind. The message is clear, the king of Copan was not only on earth, he was part of the sky's order, but even the stars fade. After centuries of glory, Copan began to crumble. Its river changed course, its soil thinned, and the gods grew silent. The people left in waves, leaving behind temples swallowed by vines, stelae toppled by roots, and the throne forgotten in the dust. When explorers stumbled upon it in the 19th century, it looked less like a throne and more like a relic swallowed by the earth. But even covered in moss, its carvings still spoke. You can still see the careful geometry, the deep lines that mirror constellations. The Maya didn't carve for beauty, they carved for eternity, and in a way they succeeded. Today, when you stand in the great plaza of Copan, you feel that presence, the stillness, the hum of something vast. The air feels heavy, as if filled with echoes, and if you listen closely, you can almost hear the low rhythm of drums from far away, as though time itself is breathing beneath the ground. The throne now sits under protective shade, but its story is still alive. Every archaeologist who studies it feels they're not just unearthing a stone seat, they're touching a fragment of consciousness. The Maya were not a people lost to superstition, they were scientists of the soul. They mapped time with precision, built observatories aligned to Venus, and saw no separation between faith and physics. The throne of Copan was the axis of that worldview. What remains most mysterious isn't how they built it, but why they stopped. Did they foresee their own collapse? Did they believe their gods had abandoned them, or that they had completed the cycle? The carvings hint at renewal, not despair. Perhaps they didn't vanish. Perhaps they transformed, like their kings upon the throne, into something we can no longer see. As the sun sets behind the forest canopy, the ruins glow gold for a brief moment, and in that light, the throne looks whole again. Not broken, not ancient, but eternal. It reminds us that power fades, kingdoms crumble, but meaning endures in stone. The throne of Copan isn't just an artifact, it's a question, whispered by the jungle, echoed by time. When we build to touch the heavens, what are we really trying to remember? And so it waits, silent, sacred, unbroken. A monument not to a man, but to the dream of every civilization, to leave behind something that time cannot erase. The fortress of Masada. In the barren silence of the Judean desert, where the winds carry the scent of salt from the Dead Sea and the cliffs rise like petrified waves, stands a place that was once both a sanctuary and a tomb, Masada. It is a fortress carved from defiance, a monument to the last breath of freedom for a people who refused to kneel. Long before the name became legend, Masada was a mountain without mercy. Steep, dry, impossible to climb, it rises 400 meters above the desert floor, a flat-topped giant of rock. It was here, isolated and unreachable, that King Herod the Great saw opportunity. Around 30 BCE, he ordered the impossible, a fortress palace built on the edge of the world. To Herod it was both refuge and statement, that even in the harshest place on earth, his power could command beauty, luxury, and fear. Herod's builders carved palaces into cliffs, constructed storerooms that could feed hundreds, and built cisterns deep enough to hold the lifeblood of survival, water. Every stone was placed with precision, every terrace aligned to catch the morning sun. The northern palace, his masterpiece, clung to the rock in 3 tiers, a marvel of balance and arrogance. It was more than protection. It was Herod's message to time, that no storm, no enemy, no god could unseat him. But Herod's fortress would one day become the stage for a story far greater than his ambition, a story of resistance, of faith, and of tragedy. Nearly a century after Herod's death, the world had changed. The Romans ruled the lands of Judea, and rebellion simmered beneath every stone. The Great Jewish Revolt erupted in 66 CE, a desperate cry against the might of an empire. For years rebels fought and died, their cities burned, their temples razed, Jerusalem itself fell in flames. But one group refused to surrender. They were the Sicarii, zealots, fighters, and survivors. Led by Eleazar ben Yair, they fled to the fortress of Masada, the one place left unconquered. To the Romans it was a rock in the desert. To the rebels it was a symbol, the last stronghold of a free people. For years they lived atop that mountain, cut off from the world below. They grew crops, collected water, repaired Herod's ancient walls, and watched the Roman banners approach from afar. They knew the empire would come, they knew they couldn't win, but they also knew something the Romans didn't. They were already free, because their spirit could not be enslaved. In the spring of 73 CE, the Roman governor Flavius Silva arrived with the 10th Legion. 8,000 soldiers surrounded the base of the fortress, encircling it with a wall of stone, a siege ring that trapped the defenders inside. Then they began to build the impossible, a massive ramp, rising slowly toward Masada's western wall, thousands of tons of rock and sand, carried by slaves and soldiers, day after day. From above the defenders watched. They knew that every sunrise brought the Romans closer. But they did not despair. They strengthened the walls, prayed, and prepared for the end. In their hearts they made a decision that would echo for millennia. When the ramp was completed, the Romans rolled a great siege tower to the top. They lit the fortress gate aflame. Smoke rose into the desert sky, and that night, as the fire burned, Eleazar gathered his people. He told them the truth they had always known, that the Romans would come at dawn, that capture meant slavery, humiliation, and death, and he spoke the words that would seal their fate. We were born to die free men. That night, 960 men, women, and children made their choice. Rather than surrender, they embraced death as their final act of defiance. When the Romans breached the gates at sunrise, they found only silence and the dead. Masada was taken, but victory tasted like ash. The Romans stood among the ruins of their conquest, surrounded by the echo of courage they could never understand. Centuries passed, empires rose and fell. The desert reclaimed the fortress, the stones eroded, the cisterns filled with dust. But Masada did not vanish. Its story waited, buried beneath time, whispered through the wind. In the 1960s, archaeologists began to unearth its secrets. They found Herod's storerooms, still holding grains of barley. They found the Roman ramp, still scarred by war. And in a small chamber, they found fragments of scrolls, verses from Ezekiel, words of prophecy and hope. Thus says the Lord God, Behold, I will open your graves and bring you up from them. It was as if the spirit of Masada still spoke, not of death, but of endurance. Today, the fortress stands restored, its walls rebuilt, its stairways carved anew. Tourists climb the snake path at dawn to watch the sun rise over the Dead Sea. The light turns the cliffs gold, and for a moment, it feels as if the past breathes again. For Israel, Masada became more than an archaeological site. It became a symbol of identity, of survival, of the unbreakable human will. For generations, soldiers swore their oaths there, beneath the ancient walls, declaring, "Masada shall not fall again." But beyond nationalism or history, Masada's story speaks to something deeper, a truth that belongs to all people. That freedom, real freedom, is not given, it is chosen, even at the edge of despair. That the walls we build to protect ourselves can become the stages where we define who we are. The stones of Masada are silent now, but their silence is not empty. It carries the echoes of every heartbeat that once defied the impossible. It carries Herod's pride, Eleazar's courage, the whispers of mothers holding their children, the prayers of men who refuse to bow. And when the desert wind sweeps across the plateau, it's as if the fortress itself remembers not the moment of death, but the moment of choice. Masada stands today not as a ruin, but as a mirror. It asks each of us the same question the rebels once faced. When your freedom is threatened, what would you do to keep it? Perhaps that's why it still draws people from across the world, not to mourn the dead, but to witness what it means to live unbroken. And as the final rays of sunset wash the cliffs in fire, you can almost see the shadows of the past standing at the edge, proud, unyielding, eternal. Masada may have fallen once, but its spirit never did.